Amidst blooming wisteria, a long-haired man in a blue robe embraces a woman, asking, "Yona, have you been well?" Yona, a young woman with dark hair and twin buns, wonders why he's speaking to her so sweetly. Blushing and flustered, Yona shyly addresses the man as young master. The young master gently lifts her chin, asking why she is looking down.
He smiles, asking her to show him her face after so long, and inquiring if she's been hurt. Flustered by Dan Mokby's handsome, mature face, Yona internally panics before quickly reassuring him that she's been doing very well. Under a cloudy night sky, his inner monologue continues, revealing he followed her wishes by helping the weak and restraining his violent urges. Dan Mokby reflects on his efforts, concluding that everyone now praises him as a righteous and chivalrous gentleman.
Yona recalls praising the young master for remembering everything she said, even while they were apart. Dan Mokby's gentle expression shifts, as he quietly asks if she really thinks his efforts were great.
His demeanor darkens completely as he clutches his chest, accusing her of leaving him to be consumed by darkness.
Grabbing her arm with a sudden snap, he demands to know why Yona ran away from him. Leaning in close with an intense gaze, Dan Mokby warns her to choose her answer carefully. He cups her face gently, his voice filled with sorrow as he confesses how lonely he was without her. Begging her not to leave him again, he leans in for a kiss as a flashback reveals their relationship is her karma, beginning when she entered a novel. The narration explains she wrote the novel Flower Shadow's Story, which featured a righteous protagonist named Dan Mok-chang. The novel was a thrilling martial arts story about love and friendship, but with a tragic final villain named Dan Mokby. Against a sparkling sky, her narration trails off, revealing that, surprisingly, Suddenly, she finds herself as a young girl in the world of her own novel, a shocking transmigration. A flashback shows her past self, deeply attached to the novel's protagonist, Dan Mok-chang, crying and smiling with him as she wrote. Now in the novel, the young girl throws a tantrum, lamenting the lack of Wi-Fi but admitting her new outfit is awesome. She despairs over an insect bite on her hand, wondering how she'll survive in a world without modern medicine. A pile of clothes is thrown on her as a voice shouts, "Yona? Go wash these." Despite being demoted to a lower-class girl, Yona cheerfully accepts her chores, motivated by the thought of food. Lugging a heavy basket of laundry, she wistfully thinks about how much easier this would be with a washing machine. As she walks, she reminds herself that one hope is keeping her going in this new life. She dreams of meeting the novel's hero, Dan Mok-chang, gushing over his skills and peerless beauty, eager to see her child. Living in his house gives her hope that she will surely meet the handsome male lead one day. But after a week, Yona grows frustrated, having not even caught a glimpse of him behind the estate's high walls. Her despair is interrupted when she spots a tree full of ripe, juicy peaches. Peeking through a gate, she realizes she's been craving something sweet since she arrived. She snatches a peach, thrilled at the lucky break after days of poor food. She bites into the fruit with pure delight, exclaiming how delicious it is. Blushing with greed, she quietly considers taking a few more for later. A voice suddenly interrupts her, asking if she knows she isn't allowed in this area, and she looks up, startled. She finds a small, sullen-looking boy with long, blue-gray hair staring down at her.
Yona is immediately smitten, thinking the little boy is incredibly cute as he starts to walk away. Pretending to be clumsy, she loudly laments dropping her peach to get the boy's attention. She offers him a fresh peach, but he rejects it, stating she shouldn't be here. She asks if the place is haunted.
The boy confirms something similar appears, but Yona boldly declares that she isn't scared at all.
Her brave response leaves the little boy momentarily stunned and speechless. The boy explains that ghosts only appear to believers, but Yona confidently declares she doesn't believe in them.
She proudly explains her secret. She turns all ghost stories into her own tales to make them disappear. The boy identifies her as a storyteller, but when she questions why he's in a forbidden place, she turns the tables on him. Clasping his hands to his chest, the boy shyly admits he's there because he is the ghost. Yona stares back in complete shock. not expecting his bizarre confession. The boy with blue-gray hair looks down with a sad and lonely expression.
Yona can't contain her amusement and begins to laugh, prompting the boy to ask why. Playfully poking his blushing cheek, she calls his bluff, asking where one could possibly find a ghost as cute as him.
The young boy with long, dark hair timidly asks if he's cute, and Yona enthusiastically reassures him that he looks just like a doll. Yona offers him a bright red peach, and as he takes it, he remarks that he never knew they grew there. She smiles, saying now he has a reason to look forward to summer. A cute chibi illustration shows the boy holding the peach against a pink, patterned background. Looking down at the peach in his hands, the boy seems mesmerized by the fruit. After taking a bite, he's amazed by the sweetness, admitting it's his first time tasting something like it, and Yona smiles in agreement. Noticing he's making a mess, Yona points out the juice on his hand and offers to wipe it for him. No! He abruptly pulls his hand away, yelling at her to let go of him right now. The peach tumbles from his grasp, rolling away on the stone path. Crouching by the dropped fruit, a bewildered Yona asks why he reacted so strongly, wondering if she surprised him. Looking down at her with a flushed, pained expression, he gives her a startling warning. She might die soon. Yona looks up in utter shock, frozen in place by his ominous words. The boy stands over a still crouching Yona, the atmosphere between them suddenly tense. His expression is a mixture of sadness and frustration as he looks away. Yona stares up at him, confused, as he tells her to blame her own meddlesome nature. He continues to push her away, telling her she should be scared and just leave. His thoughts reveal his true intention, to protect her by telling her to stop getting involved with him. Clutching his head in distress, his turmoil is interrupted by Yona asking why his face looks so sad. Instead of leaving, a smiling Yona gently pats his head, her kindness unwavering. He looks up, stunned, and thinks to himself that she isn't afraid of him. Announcing she's off to work, Yona dashes away, leaving him to wonder if she'll actually stay away. Sometime later, Yona returns with a large basket of laundry, cheerfully announcing she's back. She peeks from behind a tree, surprising him as she reminds him of his warning not to return. She innocently explains that this was the only plum tree she saw on her way to do the laundry. As she excitedly picks the fruit, he watches from the side, wondering how anyone can be so serious about food. While they eat plums on the steps, she chides him for talking about dying when he's clearly alive and well. He insists that he's a cursed child and is still slowly going to die. The word curse shocks Yona, triggering a memory of a passage from a novel she once read. In her mind, she sees an image of a man named Danmok-chang, the main character from the novel, speaking bitterly of his power. The narration explains that Danmok-chang's immense power, represented by a fierce white tiger, was never something he wanted. The story continues, recounting how the prestigious Danmok family, seeking greater strength, decided to seal a divine beast into their heir. Through numerous attempts, they succeeded in sealing a divine white tiger within the young heir, granting him world-shaking power. Back in the present, Yona stares at the boy with wide eyes, realizing he is the legendary heir from the story. She tentatively asks if he is the young master, and he seems surprised that she knows who he is. Her eyes sparkle with glee as she realizes she's found Danmok-chang, the male lead she'd been searching for. Overcome with excitement, she throws her arms around a flustered and blushing Danmok-chang. She quickly pulls back to apologize, explaining she was just thrilled to finally meet the famous young master. Blushing, Danmok-chang asks if she still likes him after knowing his story, calling her a strange kid. As he calls himself cursed again, Yona firmly tells him to stop, insisting that curses only affect those who believe in them. She extends a hand to him, cheerfully suggesting they introduce themselves properly. Her name is Lee Yeyona. He shyly accepts her handshake as she tells him to just call her Yeyona. Holding his hand, she notices how thin his wrists are, and wonders if he has a poor appetite. Resolving to fatten him up, Yona asks Danmok-chang about his favorite foods, but he has none. A sweet montage begins, showing Yeyona starting to bring him all sorts of snacks, like fresh raspberries. She then proudly presents a basket of eggs she stole from the kitchen, much to his shock. Danmok-chang happily nibbles on a cookie while Yona watches over him, encouraging him to chew thoroughly. He asks if she's visiting too often, but she simply says she loves watching him eat. When she asks why he lives alone so far from the main house, he soberly replies that this isolated place is his home, shocking her. Yona worriedly asks what he does when he misses his family, but Danmok-chang dismisses her concern, saying it's fine. He sadly explains that he's an empty existence without parents or siblings who is destined to disappear. A woman with purple-white hair asks what he means, as Danmok-chang explains to Yona that she taught him the warmth of family and the diverse flavors of food beyond bland porridge. A young boy with long dark hair smiles faintly, saying that without her he would never have known. Yona reflects on the young master, realizing her novel only mentioned his pitiful childhood in a single line about spells being inscribed on his back. A flashback shows a lonely young Danmokbi sitting on the steps as a younger Yeona approaches him from below. Young Yeona looks on with worried golden eyes, blaming herself for his sadness. He asks why she's making a sad face, calling her strange, and when she questions what he means by the end, he turns away. He reveals that a maid told him that today is his last day. Thinking to himself, he begins to shut the door. With a somber expression, he tells her not to come back anymore. Thump! The door slams shut, leaving her outside. A stunned Yeona is left alone in the courtyard, confused by his words. Stomping through town with a basket, Yeona fumes to herself, calling Danmok-chang a fool. She confronts a maid, demanding an explanation for being kicked out, but the surprised maid only asks why she's doing laundry so late. The maid dismisses Yeona's question, instead warning her that the steward ordered all servants to lock their doors and stay inside until morning.
The maid wonders aloud what's happening tonight, guessing the young master is up to something that the lower servants aren't privy to. Yona realizes this must be why he acted so strangely, but the other servant asks what she's talking about. Yona explains her strange encounter with young Master Danmok-chang, but the other servant calls her the strange one. The servant drops a bombshell. Young Master Danmok-chang isn't even at the estate right now, leaving Yona utterly shocked.
A jolt of understanding strikes Yona as the pieces begin to click into place. She recalls from her novel that Danmok-chang is training at Mount Shin to harness a divine beast's power, which is also where he's fated to meet the female lead. Amidst a bloody vision, she realizes the boy she met is the only other person in the family who is called Young Master. The narration reveals his identity, Danmok-chang's twin brother, shown with a sword piercing his neck. This twin is destined to become a public enemy of the martial world. A chilling smile on his blood-stained face, a stylized character appears against a blood-red background, heralding his name. His name is revealed to be Danmokbi as he's shown in a brutal, blood-soaked battle. Yona questions everything, wondering why Danmokbi would have the divine beast's curse when it was supposed to be inscribed only on Danmok-chang. She remembers Danmogoy's lonely words about being an empty existence, and how her presence felt like the warmth of a family he never had. Recalling his gratitude, she finally understands the depth of his isolation. Her face flushes with determination as a new resolve takes root. Thump! The sudden realization that this can't be happening is interrupted as someone grabs her, calling out her name. She decides that no matter what the future holds, the Danmokbi she met is not a villain. In her heart, she knows he was just a small and desperately lonely child. He was just a boy waiting for a hand to pull him from the darkness. Panting, she runs to his room. She finds him collapsed on the floor, unconscious and covered in dirt and blood. Horrified, she cries out his name in utter disbelief. He lies motionless on the ground, his clothes tattered and his body bruised. His face is pale and scraped, his small hand bruised from the ordeal. She rushes to his side, screaming for the young master to wake up. Danmokbi's eyes flutter open, and he weakly whispers her name, Yeona? She kneels and asks if he's okay, but he only questions why she's there.
He reminds her that he told her not to come back, as the torn clothes on his back reveal a dark marking. Peeking through the ripped fabric, she gasps in shock at the sight of a black tiger tattoo. Crying, she wonders why the mark is on Dan Mokbee's back and what on earth is going on. She begs him for an explanation as he collapses against her, whispering that it's a curse. He recounts being told that if he sacrifices himself and dies, everyone else will be happy. Pushing her away, he tells her to leave and not get involved. Yona stands her ground, separated from the despairing boy. With fierce determination in her eyes, she thinks that as the author, she cannot allow this tragic fate. She rushes toward him, shouting that he is not a cursed being. Startled, Dan Mokbee looks over his shoulder as she pleads with him not to believe their lies. A furious roar echoes from the tattoo on his back, questioning who dares to imprison a divine beast.
As Yona holds the young Dan Mokbee, a powerful energy emanates from them against a celestial backdrop. She recognizes the aura of the divine beast, the white tiger, and panics, wondering why it's here. A sudden realization dawns on her as she connects Dan Mokbee's fate to something else. She understands now. The side effects of sealing the beast in Dan Mokchang's body were never meant for him. All the curses and negative power were redirected to his twin, Dan Mokbee, fueling his future rage. In a flash of memory, a bloody Dan Mokbee urges her to run, but Yeona vows to stay with him until the end. Back in the present, Yeona is stunned, questioning why he would go to such lengths for her. She throws herself in front of him to shield him from a devastating blast, screaming a warning. The disembodied voice mocks their efforts, calling them vermin and declaring that running is futile. A spectral white tiger materializes as the voice promises that everyone present will die. Holding Dan Mokbee, Yeona furiously yells at the shadowy beast to stop its nonsense. Gazing at the injured boy, she declares with fierce determination that they will not die today. She knows the tragic ending she wrote for him, but she vows that this is not the day it comes true. As a wave of dark energy surges toward them, she screams at the beast to back off. She holds Dan Mokbee tightly, bracing herself against the terrifying onslaught of power. The blast of energy appears to hit them, and she lets out a startled cry. Still holding Dan Mokbee, she realizes the curse has no effect, believing it only works on those who accept it. She narrates that to survive, Dan Mokbee himself must stop believing he is cursed. Looking into his eyes, Yeona makes a request, insisting that he is the only one who can fulfill it. She passionately begs him to simply believe he isn't cursed, promising the entire situation will then vanish. She reassures him that this will all feel like a bad dream he won't even remember. Continuing her encouragement, she tells him he'll be able to laugh about it one day, prompting him to ask if that's truly possible for him. With tears streaming down his bruised face, the boy asks if he can really become someone who can move on. She clasps his hand, assuring him he can and asking him to believe in her, the one who protected him when his family cast him aside. A vision shows an older, white-haired version of Yeona, smiling as she holds hands with a grown Dan Mokbee. As the dark energy dissipates, the divine beast's spell breaks and the spectral tiger roars. The divine beast's voice booms in frustration, enraged that a mere human has defied its power. A final, massive wave of dark energy explodes outward, knocking them both unconscious. The dark, oppressive energy slowly fades into a calm, clear sky. Yeona slowly comes to, calling out to the unconscious young master beside her. An adult voice calls her name, asking if she is okay as she looks up from his embrace. Dazed and blushing, she looks up into the face of the man holding her. Suddenly, she finds her child self standing alone in a vast, white, empty space. A massive, shadowy beast looms over her, introducing itself as her consciousness. The spectral tiger form stalks toward her through the void. Turning away with a huff, Yeona refuses to speak with the tiger having a tantrum, leaving the beast stunned. She reconsiders, admitting that since the tiger was sealed while minding its own business, its anger is understandable. She turns back to face the shadowy beast with a new idea. Now standing confidently atop the beast's head, she declares that things will be different from now on. She reaches out and gently boops the spectral tiger on its nose. Her hand passes through the beast as it dissolves into particles of light, its form vanishing. She looks at her own hand, then looks up and asks, "Me?" With a thoughtful expression, she seems to be accepting a new role or identity. A bright, confident smile spreads across her face as she appears to make a decision. Meanwhile, at Shin Mountain, a figure falls from the sky, coughing weakly. Don Mokchang, looking pale and ill, violently hacks up a large amount of blood. He collapses onto a glowing blue magic circle as three elders watch in dismay, stating their ritual was almost complete. A stern-faced man with a top knot glares down at the failed ritual. Dan Mukchang writhes in pain on the ground as the magic circle's light flickers. A declaration echoes through the air. The spell has failed completely. At the failed ritual site, the elders panic, expressing disbelief and fearing the divine beast now holds a grudge against them. A stern-faced woman with an ornate hairpin silences them, commanding them not to be afraid. The man with the top knot orders Dan Mukchang to get up, and the boy weakly addresses him as "Father." The stern woman tells the others she knew it wouldn't be easy and expected them to know as well. The elders rationalize the failure, claiming true power isn't gained at once, while a pained Dan Mokchang wonders if he must endure this again. The stern woman leans over the magic circle, concerned about the cause of the break since the ritual itself was perfect. The man with the top knot dismisses her worry, stating they can gradually fix the problem, and she seems to accept his words. Looking up at the night sky with resolve, the woman declares that as long as they don't give up, their opportunities are endless. The scene shifts to a bright full moon, identifying the source of their conflict, the divine beast, White Tiger. Yona floats through a celestial void, lost in a dreamlike thought that begins with, "Why I?" Her internal monologue continues, reflecting on the desire to choose a name that doesn't exist in the world. She recalls the themes of her novel, starting with adventure against a backdrop of red maple leaves. Visions of friendship and love from her story flash through her mind as she remembers enjoying being in control of everything. Her thoughts turn somber as she realizes she wrote a novel just to make someone sad because he was the villain, regretting his painful life. Yona jolts awake in her bed, gasping in surprise as she returns to reality. A voice asks if she's okay, and she looks up to see the young, bloody Dan Mokbi by her side. She notices the blood on his face, realizing with horror that his wound is real. Grabbing his sleeve in a panic, she asks if the young master is all right. Her eyes widen in confusion as she suddenly feels a strange, heavy sensation in her stomach. Thump! A small, white, bear-like creature with bright blue eyes appears with a flash of light. She stares in disbelief as the tiny creature chews on her blanket, exclaiming, "This is!" The small creature roars, projecting a massive spectral tiger as it calls her insolent. Dan Mokbi, now wearing a small golden crown, explains to the stunned Yeona that the cat-like creature is the divine beast White Tiger. Yeona holds the small creature in her hands, questioning if this cat is really the beast, while it snaps back that it is rude to be called a cat. The tiny white beast scolds them for being arrogant children and demands they show it more respect now that they know its true identity. Completely ignoring its demands, Yona delightedly pokes the creature's soft paw pad. She apologizes with a blush, admitting she can't resist its adorable pinky jelly claw. The divine beast stares back with a deadpan expression, calling her a strange human being. Now sitting calmly on her bed, the creature promises to repay her for her kindness. Yona looks bewildered, asking what it means, since she hasn't done anything to help it. The divine beast nudges her away, dismissively asking why a human being would even need a name. Yona retorts that if it won't tell her its name, she'll just call it Jelly, chiding it for being rude to someone it owes a favor. The beast turns away, explaining it can't help its attitude because it naturally hates humans. It elaborates that greedy clans who use it for their own desires are not worthy of being called by their names. Yona nods thoughtfully, agreeing that the beast's reasoning is correct. Surprised she doesn't deny it, the beast confirms that those humans who used it were indeed bad. The beast quickly adds that Yona is different, though, and seems flustered that she agreed with its cynical view. Peeking out from the corner, a tiny Yeona tells the beast not to believe in her, finding the notion annoying. Dan Mokbi gets her attention, quietly saying her name. A hazy vision appears, showing a grown Yeona confronting a younger version of herself. Back in the present, Yeona leans on Danmokbi, complaining about her headache and the uncertainty of her future here. She looks up and is shocked to see Danmokbi has sprouted cat ears and a tail, asking why he suddenly looks so happy. The tiny divine beast, now perched on her head, announces it will call her by her name, leaving Yeona surprised but thankful. Yeona asks if the sealing magic is completely broken, and the white tiger confirms yesterday's spell failed but warns their enemies won't give up easily. Thinking of Danmok-chang's father, Yeona internally notes that a man willing to sacrifice his own children won't be stopped by a few failures. She admits to the beast that she's not sure she can break the next spell with just a word again. Holding the tiny beast, she looks up in shock and asks, "What?" The divine beast is equally surprised, asking if she truly broke the magic without knowing what power she used. The beast explains her power is the spirit, which gives substance to things that exist only in words. It wonders how an ordinary kid like her can wield such power, and Yeona laughs, agreeing it's a very good question. With newfound certainty, Yeona explains that her power is real because she's the one who created this world with words. The tiny white tiger warns her that in the near future, their enemies will try to summon the divine beast again. The beast continues, explaining that every time they try, Danmokbi will be forced to endure the same terrible pain as before. As Yeona asks if there is any way to protect him from the sorcery, the beast confirms that it does have a solution. The voice explains that to be free from the engraved magic, Danmokbi must build up his own strength. A vision shows Danmokbi meditating peacefully, surrounded by swirling blue energy as he begins his training. The white tiger tells them that achieving the necessary strength takes decades and is nearly impossible with his currently weak body. As the beast states there's no way to train his body quickly, Yeona's expression hardens with determination as she forms a plan. She confidently reassures a worried Danmokbi, telling him to trust in her piggy bank, leaving him to wonder what she means. The scene shifts to a man in green robes standing pensively beneath a large, leafy tree. Suddenly, Yeona leaps onto his back with a cheerful shout, startling the man she calls General. Now standing before him, she asks if he is smoking, and the flustered general stammers her name. She waves a hand dismissively, telling him not to worry, as she has no prejudice against smokers. The relieved general allows her to pat his head, unaware of her ulterior motive. With a sly, blushing expression, she leans in and begins her real point with the word, "But?" She whispers that smoking is taboo for a dancer, and the terrified general begs her not to tell anyone. With a sweet and cunning smile, she asks him what he will choose, having successfully cornered him. The next morning, Yeona's voice rings out, calling for the young master to wake up. She energetically shakes the still sleeping Danmokbi, announcing that it's already morning. A groggy Danmokbi rubs his eyes, wondering why Yeona is in his room and if he is dreaming. He pops up from under the covers with a jolt, fully awake and surprised. He questions the elaborate meal set before him, and Yeona cheerfully explains that it's his breakfast. Danmokbi stares wide-eyed and blushing at the impressive spread of food she has prepared for him. Yeona declares she is now in charge of him, and a shocked Danmokbi asks if she's really going to do this every day. As Danmokbi wonders how this all happened, the white tiger nibbles on a fish, finding the situation difficult. The general panics, realizing he'll have to take the secret of letting Yeona care for the young master to his grave. Yeona explains she negotiated with the general and offers Danmokbi a piece of pickled ginseng, which he eats with a yelp. As he chews with a pained expression, noting the sweet and bitter taste, she happily encourages him to eat well. She smiles with radiant determination, thinking to herself that this is all part of her plan. The focus shifts to an illustration of a powerful-looking ginseng root. Her internal monologue concludes that this ordeal is about finding a chance to win against their foes. With the white tiger perched on her head, Yeona stands sternly in a garden, ready for the next step. She thinks that while the general is good at hiding things, as the author, she knows the best hiding spots. Her confidence wavers as she breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing there might be a problem. Wah! She panics amidst the overgrown plants, unable to tell which one is what she's looking for. Deciding to trust her cat's sense of smell, she holds the divine beast up, who angrily retorts that it is the white tiger. She showers the beast with praise, calling it a great god, whose abilities far exceed those of a lowly human like herself. Her flattery works, and the white tiger puffs out its chest, smugly agreeing that its keen sense of smell is unmatched. The beast condescends to help the humble human out of pity, much to Yona's delight. The tiny white tiger bounces excitedly through the plants, sniffing for the correct one. Pa? The beast triumphantly identifies the plant, and Yona claps excitedly, praising its greatness. She rewards the white tiger with a big hug, but it struggles, demanding to be let go while she happily refuses, enjoying its softness. The beast accuses her of acting out of self-interest, and she cheekily admits that it has caught her. As she walks off, still hugging the struggling creature, the divine beast fumes in frustration over this human. Later, Yeona proudly carries a tray, happy that Danmokbi ate all the bay ginseng she prepared for him. The white tiger asks why she's caring for him, and she explains it's for a crime she committed and because he needs a strong body. She resolves to maximize his inner power to help him overcome the curse. As a vision of a strengthened Danmokbi appears, the white tiger grumbles that it dislikes Danmokbi's aura and tells her she doesn't have to feed him next time. Yona cheerfully dismisses its concerns, but the beast sternly warns her to be careful about giving him too much power. Hearing the white tiger's serious warning, Yona's cheerful expression fades into one of quiet concern. A narrator reflects on Danmokbi, who is shown bruised and bloodied, stating he is destined to be the world's ultimate villain. However, the narrator explains that the seed of villainy once in Danmokbi's mind has now stopped growing. In the present, a content Yeona smiles peacefully with her eyes closed, basking in a warm light. Her hands cradle a green pendant as she stands amidst a field of blooming flowers. She carefully places a red tray holding a meal on a table. Yeona enthusiastically calls to Beiko, announcing they're going to catch a golden carp, as an unseen voice questions if she's going to feed him again. Beaming with joy, she declares that this is just the beginning of her efforts. Later, Danmokbi tells Yeona he enjoyed the meal, admitting it was his first time trying fish and that it was delicious, making her smile. He privately wonders about the strange power he feels from her food, suspecting it isn't normal. Yeona gently pats Danmokbi's head, causing him to blush slightly. He asks if she got the ingredients with the white tiger's help, and she happily confirms he was a great help. Looking down wistfully, Danmokbi thinks to himself that he wants to go out with Yeona too. Yeona reassures him with a bright smile, promising they will go out together any time once he's healthy and safe. In her imagination, she pictures them cheerfully running out of the middle gate together. She continues her fantasy, describing how they'll visit the market, eat delicious food, and buy whatever they want. A wide-eyed Danmokbi is moved as Yeona passionately vows to search the entire world to get him anything he desires. Overwhelmed by his earnestness, a flustered Yeona thinks, how can he say such things so proudly? Shifting gears, Yeona announces it's time for a mealtime education, asking him how he plans to buy things with no money or land, which confuses him. Danmokbi explains his concern, saying a child who doesn't even know about money shouldn't get into an accident trying to do things for her. He gently places his hand on hers, expressing his gratitude for her thoughts but telling her that's not what he wants from her. In a sweet moment, the two kneel facing each other, holding hands and gazing into each other's eyes. She describes her hope for him to become a kind person who can reach out to anyone, picturing a smiling, benevolent version of him. He asks if she wants him to be like her, admitting it seems too hard, while a secretly overjoyed Yeona is thrilled he sees her that way. She encourages him, insisting it's not difficult and that he just needs to continue growing up beautifully. The small white tiger, Baeko, approaches with a very unimpressed look on his face. Danmokbi instructs Baeko to sit down properly, and the tiger promptly plops onto the floor before him. The fluffy white tiger sits obediently and looks up, as if asking for his master's approval. Sitting cross-legged, Danmokbi closes his eyes and begins to focus his energy. Ugh. He grimaces and blushes from the strain of the difficult training. Yeona watches with concern, clasping her hands and cheering him on to succeed. Danmokbi glances up as Yeona gives him an enthusiastic yes of encouragement. He returns to his meditation, a serene glow surrounding him as he concentrates. With determination in her eyes, Yeona makes a heartfelt promise to always stay by his side. Danmokbi listens to her words, his expression calm and focused. A small, happy smile appears on his face as he softly asks if she truly promised. His eyes snap open, now filled with a powerful and unwavering resolve. Yeona clutches a startled Baeko, shocked by the sudden change she senses in Danmokbi. Her eyes are wide with astonishment at what she has just witnessed. 3 months later, having tirelessly searched for a special ingredient for Danmokbi, Yeona walks toward the estate carrying his meal. She reflects on her determination to help him, willing to try anything, even cooking seasoned sea snails, to make his food better. A taller Danmokbi meets her outside, but she insists it's her job to bring him his meals. He takes the heavy tray from her, noting that her hard work has helped him grow so well. Yeona privately gushes over how healthy and shiny he has become with his newfound muscle. Noticing his sleeves are now too short, she realizes he's grown again and makes a mental note to get him new clothes. She compares the feeling to nurturing a stray street cat she picked up. The metaphorical cat is now shown looking proud, healthy, and pampered. Despite his remarkable progress, Yeona looks aside with a troubled expression, admitting to herself that she's still not happy. She wonders if his recent, rapid changes are a result of the special meals she's been making for him. As her heart aches with an unknown worry, Baeko taps her shoulder from behind, impatiently demanding to know if his meal is ready yet. Startled, Yeona turns as a tiny cartoonish Baeko complains that she always takes care of Danmokbi first. The white tiger questions why she's bothering to bring Danmokbi cold water, and Yeona trails off, unable to answer. The tiny white tiger sits in a cute, stylized doodle, looking utterly bewildered by her actions. Perched on her shoulder, the divine beast scolds Yeona, who laughs and apologizes, claiming her hands moved on their own to pet it. Stomp! The furious little beast leaps to the ground, fuming with anger. Calling it a fool, Yeona tries to calm the white tiger by offering it a meal of dried pollock with all the fine bones removed. Yeona smiles brightly, promising to take the food to the kitchen, but her thoughts begin to drift elsewhere. Her mind wanders as she wonders how Danmokchang is doing in Sinsan. In a hazy vision, she imagines Danmokchang and hopes he is eating and living well. Holding a basket of golden buns, Yeona smiles sweetly and asks if they look delicious. Now in a different outfit, she playfully peeks from behind a tree, calling out for the general. Startled, the general recognizes Yeona and stammers in surprise. Noticing his pipe, Yeona cheekily observes that he still seems to love it. The general, thinking she's just there to gossip again, wearily asks what she needs from him. With a bright and determined smile, Yeona throws her arms open and demands new clothes. The general turns away, stating there are no spare clothes for Danmokbi, and offers her silk to make some herself. Shocked that Danmokbi has no extra clothes, Yeona remembers seeing him shivering in a single large robe. Furious at the blatant discrimination, she demands clothes that Danmokchang no longer wears. The general firmly refuses, stating she can't take them without permission, which gives Yeona a sudden idea. Feigning urgency, she claims she can't go to the sewing room and asks for help, but he simply offers her cotton fabric to practice on. He smugly states that if it's for her master, she should learn to sew, leaving Yeona pouting that she can't refute his logic. Whoosh! Yeona storms off in a huff, shouting back that the general is stingy. With a flushed, angry face, she wishes his cigarettes would taste terrible, prompting the shocked general to scold her for her language. Alone now, the general reflects on Yeona, noting that it must be difficult for her to serve the young master by herself. He thinks of her as a child with a soft and friendly personality. Remembering how she took charge of Danmokbi, the general smokes his pipe and wonders if he made a mistake by not stopping her. He sighs, thinking to himself that he never expected the situation to become so complicated. At night, another man delivers a letter from the Lord, and the general wonders what could have happened in Sinsan. His eyes widen in shock as he reads the letter's contents. The letter reveals the Lord failed in his ritual and is determined to try again until he can summon the beast. The letter ends with a cryptic instruction to keep a close eye on the drip tray. A purple-haired man is dismayed to learn the summoning spell failed, leaving Lord Danmokchang ill and bedridden. He wonders why Danmokbi was completely unaffected by the failed ritual, despite being related. In fact, he notes, Danmokbi's condition has noticeably improved since the incident. He concludes that Yeona's care and affection must be the cause of the young master's recovery. The purple-haired man approaches the general at night to discuss the matter. He asks about the girl with the young master, and the general confirms he's talking about Yeona, the servant. The man confirms it's her and declares that before the Lord returns, something must be done. The chilling order is given. Kill her as soon as possible. The general reacts in shock, and the man explains that Yeona is likely the reason the summoning failed, as she seals the divine beast's power. He warns that things will only get worse if the Lord finds her there and urges the general to get rid of her now. Clenching his fist, the general grimly agrees to the plan. He practices his swordsmanship, the man's dire words echoing in his mind. The general looks up at the sky, his expression deeply troubled. Standing alone in the courtyard, he dismisses the order as nonsense, refusing to consider it further. He takes out his pipe, reasoning that she's just a good girl and there's nothing wrong with her. Cough. He's suddenly racked by a coughing fit, wondering why his pipe tastes so bitter. Remembering Yeona's curse, he wonders with a sweat drop if her childish wish came true so quickly. Yeona complains to a listening Danmokbi about the general's stinginess, while she ponders what to do next. A tiny, tearful Yeona apologizes profusely to the young master for her failure. Determined, she practices her sewing, slowly gaining confidence before deciding to try her new skills on silk for Danmokbi. She thinks with dismay that her attempt at sewing a robe for Danmokbi didn't turn out as expected. Holding the poorly made robe, she tells a kneeling Danmokbi to lift his head, but he says he's fine with the small piece of fabric. He asks if her own clothes are something she cherishes, since she seems to wear them every day. In a sweet memory, a younger Yeona helps a younger Danmokbi adjust his blue robe.
She smiles, telling him that while it's a bit big, the robe suits him well, making him blush.
Back in the present, Danmokbi looks down sadly while holding a large, ill-fitting robe. Yeona panics, realizing it won't fit. As Danmokbi explains, he received it as a gift, but he still prefers the one she made for him. Clutching her handmade gift to his chest, he blushes and exclaims that he loves it so much more. Danmokbi happily shows off the robe, and Yeona thinks that it only looks good because he's handsome enough to pull off rags. He clenches his fist, honestly thinking to himself about something more. Overcome with emotion, Danmokbi suddenly pulls a surprised Yeona into a hug. He confesses he never understood the appeal of silk until he saw her wear it, realizing how beautiful it is. A deeply flustered Yeona thinks his kind heart is what's truly beautiful. Danmokbi promises that when they can go out, he will buy her something nice, though for now he can only offer his old clothes. Touched, Yeona tearfully tells the young master that his kind intentions are more than enough. She gently pats his head, wondering when he grew so mature and telling him it's okay to be a little spoiled. A shocked Danmokbi protests being called a kid, demanding to know her age. Caught off guard, Yeona stammers, flustered by the question about her age. She realizes she hasn't calculated her age in this world and makes a guess. With a thoughtful expression, she concludes that she must be around 7 years old. Trying to guess his age, she first says 8, then excitedly declares they must both be 9. Danmokbi quietly says he doesn't know his age, but if she's 7, then he'll accept that. Confused by his reaction, Yeona notices that he seems a little sulky. She muses that while he looks younger than her now, his growth rate suggests he will become a very strong adult. He asks if she wants him to grow up, and she enthusiastically replies, of course. She hugs him tightly, saying she loves how he fits in her arms now but wants to see him grow up healthy. Danmokbi asks if she promises to stay by his side even when he's grown very big, catching her by surprise. Yeona hesitates, recalling a previous conversation and wondering if she should just give a simple answer. As she considers saying maybe, Danmokbi declares that if she hesitates, he'll refuse to grow up. Flustered, Yeona insists he has to grow up, reminding him that he's a good person. Later that night, a silhouetted figure reads by the light of a single candle. Danmokbi studies a book titled Dawn's First Sword as the white tiger approaches his desk. The white tiger remarks that Yan has brought him another strange item, and Danmokbi quietly agrees. The book is revealed to be a martial arts manual of the Danmok family, specializing in spear techniques. Sigh. The white tiger remarks that Danmokbi is really something else, prompting a confused look from the boy. The beast thinks about the recent family squabbles, its thoughts turning to the special food Yeona has been preparing. The divine beast wonders how Danmokbi can trust Yeona so blindly when she provides secret elixirs and techniques even the Lord couldn't find. Danmokbi's answer is simple and full of faith. Because it was given by Yeon, that's all that matters. He reflects that though he is 11, he looks as weak as a 7-year-old in others' eyes. With quiet determination, he vows that he will be the one to make Yan happy one day. Thump. The impatient white tiger leaps onto the book, telling him to move aside so it can grasp the technique itself. TSK. The beast scoffs, asking if he really thinks just reading the book is enough to master it. It explains that martial arts are honed through practice with a sword, not by sitting and reading. Leaping from the desk, the white tiger orders him to follow with a branch to begin his training. The divine beast offers to demonstrate its choshik, a technique that uses internal energy. The next morning dawns as a voice calls out for the young master. Yeona peeks into the room, cheerfully urging him to wake up before the sun is high in the sky. She pauses, looking into the room with a curious, "Oh?" To her surprise, she finds Danmokbi and the white tiger sleeping peacefully together in the same bed. Looking on with a gentle smile, Yeona thinks that Danmokbi and the white tiger must have trained all night, finding their dedication both adorable and impressive. Deciding what to do next, she quietly approaches the door to their room. She gently closes the screen, thinking she should let them rest comfortably. Now outside, Yeona wonders if she should do some laundry when another woman approaches from behind. "Me?" a surprised Yeona asks, as the woman accuses her of slacking off while everyone else is busy. Grabbing her arm, the woman demands she come help, but a flustered Yeona protests that she's in charge of young Master Danmokbi. Yeona hesitates, thinking that since the young master is sleeping, it should be fine to help out a little bit. The woman impatiently tells her to stop standing there, and Yeona wonders what on earth is going on. Soon, a large procession of people on horseback is seen arriving. A man in green and red leads the procession, with another person riding behind him. Now in a purple robe, a completely exhausted Yeona collapses into bed, sighing that she's so tired. She reflects on working nonstop for 3 days as a montage shows her being called to do one menial task after another. The servants are forced to sleep on the floor in a large room as she thinks they've had to cut down on sleep and can't even return to their own quarters. Lying awake, she looks out a window and wonders how the young master is doing. Thinking back, she regrets being dragged away in such a hurry without being able to tell him anything. She sighs, desperately wishing to return to the young master and Lord Bahu's side, lamenting how attached she's become after just a few days. An older man with a mustache, the overseer, walks through a courtyard and asks if everyone is working well. He stops dead in his tracks, his eyes wide with shock as he lets out a startled, "Huh?" A cheerful Yeona appears, calling out to the Lord Overseer. Dropping a straw hat at his feet, she explains that she was dragged there to help because they were short on hands, leaving him speechless. The Overseer sweats, recalling the chilling order to kill that child as soon as possible, and realizing the danger of being seen with her by the Lord. He grabs Yeona's arm, urgently telling her it's dangerous and to go back quickly, but she's confused and senses something is wrong. He continues to push her away, simply telling her to get out of there, leaving her even more confused. Suddenly, Danmokbi appears with a serious expression on his face. Stunned, the Overseer stammers, asking how the young master got here as Danmokbi walks purposefully toward them. Whap! Dan Mokbi firmly grabs the overseer's wrist. Pulling Yeona behind him, Dan Mokbi glares fiercely at the man and warns that if he takes her away without permission, he won't be forgiven. The overseer flinches, stammering the young master's title in fear. A servant runs up, shouting that the Lord has returned, stunning the overseer, who thought they had more time. Flustered, the overseer shoos the servant away, telling him to hurry back to his place. Dan Mokbi tells Yeona they should leave, but she asks him to wait, saying she has something to bring. Something to bring? He asks, watching as she happily runs off. Even if she has to leave, she thinks. She's determined to take what she earned for her work. She returns holding a tray of food as the overseer scolds her for gathering her things, but she defiantly says she worked for it. The overseer pats her head, telling her to go straight back to her quarters without straying, and she happily agrees. Back at her table, Yeona smiles, thinking she needs to pack the food she earned. Dan Mokbi peeks in, calling her name, and she cheerfully tells the hungry young master that his meal is almost ready. He claims he's not hungry, but she playfully insists she knows he is and asks him to wait just a little longer. Turning away with a pout, Dan Mokbi accuses her of leaving him alone and going away. She laughs it off, reassuring him that she didn't leave and was just dragged away to help with preparations to welcome the Lord. Flustered and angry, Dan Mokbi grabs her, demanding to know why she was doing that kind of work, his tight grip startling her. Wincing in pain, Yeona tells the young master that his grip on her shoulder hurts. He immediately lets go, apologizing profusely and explaining with a pained expression that he just got so worried when she disappeared. Yeona smiles warmly, telling him she understands and knew he would be worried about her. She continues explaining her ordeal, mentioning that while peeling garlic, she ended up peeling some of her own skin in the chaos. His expression darkens instantly, and in a low, menacing voice he asks, "Who made you do that?" She brushes it off, cheerfully explaining that no one ordered her to, but she feels rewarded by all the delicious food she brought back. She beams with a triumphant and happy laugh. A small, cute panel shows the two of them looking surprised. Dan Mokbi reaches for the tray, and Yeona teases him, noting he's become much more clingy and must have been very surprised when she disappeared. Walking away, Yeona turns to the young master and decides to make him a promise, to which he curiously agrees. With a determined expression, she vows that from now on, she will never leave his side again. Beaming, she clarifies her promise. If a bad person takes her away, he must come and rescue her. A slightly flustered but touched Dan Mokbi softly says her name in response. He smiles warmly, agreeing to make a promise to her as well. Later that night, the overseer smokes a pipe under the moon, complaining about how wrecked he is from working non-stop. Taking another puff, he worries about what to do with Yan, doubting he can get rid of her or fool the Lord's eyes. He breaks into a fit of coughing from the smoke. Oh! He complains about the bitter taste when Dan Mokbi suddenly appears, calling him Chief. The startled overseer asks why the young master is out so late, but Dan Mokbi sternly demands he tell him the truth. With a sharp, intense gaze, Dan Mokbi asks who was the one that forcibly took Yeon. The overseer laughs nervously, trying to placate him by saying he'll handle the matter and urging the young master to return to his room. A cold voiceover from Dan Mokbi asks, "Do I sound like I'm asking?" Dan Mokbi declares he is no longer the fool who was locked away, asserting that the overseer can no longer manipulate him. A blue aura begins to flare around Dan Mokbi's hand as the overseer realizes he has definitely changed. Surrounded by a powerful blue aura, Dan Mokbi stands with a resolute and serious expression. A man in a dark robe appears, asking about the commotion and surprising the overseer. The newcomer is revealed to be the Lord, who stands with an imposing and stern presence. The Lord looks down at Dan Mokbi, remarking with a smirk how much the boy's face resembles someone named Chang. His expression darkens as he looks at the boy, coldly identifying him as the scapegoat. A flashback panel reveals the Lord's thoughts. He had returned after several failed attempts to summon the divine beast. The Lord stands over Dan Mokbi, who is surrounded by a crackling blue aura of energy. The Lord muses that there was an unforeseen issue with the scapegoat, noting its aura could be more useful than Chang's. With a sinister smile, the Lord decides that before anything else, he should test the scapegoat's abilities. Whoosh! The Lord lunges at Danmokbi in a blur of motion. The Lord looks on with a surprised smirk, realizing the boy managed to dodge his attack. Danmokbi reels back in shock, wondering what the sudden attack was all about as blue energy swirls around him. The Lord condescendingly calls Danmokbi a disrespectful brat for not bowing, claiming he is teaching him manners. But Danmokbi defiantly retorts. Surrounded by his intense aura, Danmokbi glares and states he never asked for such a lesson. The Lord chuckles, giving the boy credit for having guts before ominously adding, however. A close-up shows the Lord's expression turning into a furious scowl. The Lord lunges again, declaring that the boy's insolent attitude needs to be fixed. The next morning, a voice calls out for the young master. The scene shifts to a peaceful view of a branch with white berries outside a window. Yona peeks into a room, cheerfully calling for the young master. Finding the room empty, she asks the white tiger if it has seen him, and the creature drowsily refers to him as that creepy guy. The white tiger yawns that it hasn't seen him since last night, which startles Yona. She finds this strange, thinking he's not the type to vanish without a word. A feeling of dread washes over her as she senses something ominous is afoot. With growing urgency, she resolves that she needs to find him quickly. Huffing and puffing, Yona runs outside and is startled to find a boy who looks like Danmokbi standing there. The boy, now with his hair in a ponytail, turns around to look at her. Relieved, Yona rushes toward him, asking why he disappeared without saying anything. She bows her head, panting from her search, but the boy simply responds with a confused, "What?"
The boy firmly grabs her wrist.
Confused by his coldness, Yona offers to make breakfast, but the boy, blushing furiously, calls her an insolent brat for daring to grab his hand. Surprised by his completely different demeanor, Yona wonders if he's a different person. Her eyes widen as she realizes this flustered boy could be Danmokchang. The boy shoves her hand away as she internally notes how different he is from the tough but kind Danmokchang she remembers. He sternly demands she kneel and apologize, leaving Yona to wonder if he's truly this upset just because she grabbed his wrist. Blushing furiously, Danmokchang declares that of course he's special. Unlike her, he claims his father told him so, but Yona thinks he's been brainwashed, bluntly telling him he just seems mean and insensitive, which shocks him. He asks if being special isn't about having power and ruling others, but she tells him he's using power in the wrong direction. Confused, Danmokchang quietly repeats her words, wondering about the direction of power. Amidst a background of flowers, Yona's voice explains that instead of using power to oppress, it should be used to gently hold another's hand. Yona tells him that since he was born with a kind heart, he will surely understand one day. He blushes, defensively asking why she keeps talking as if she knows him so well. She's taken aback as she notices his thin, scarred arms for the first time. Yona reflects sadly, realizing she was wrong to assume Danmokchang was living comfortably under Danmokbi's care. The grim thought concludes with her admitting she was wrong. She gently calls out to the young master, who looks up at her, confused. She presents him with a steaming bowl of boiled potatoes, much to his surprise. As they sit together, Yona cheerfully tells him she made plenty, and to ask for more if he's still hungry. Blushing slightly, Danmokchang picks up a potato and quietly agrees to enjoy the meal. He takes a big, satisfying bite. Watching him eat with such enjoyment, Yona smiles and thinks his happy expression is just like Danmokbi's, concluding they truly are twins. He explains that his father only fed him bland food, so he hasn't had a warm, delicious meal in a long time. Angered by this, Yona curses Danmok, then asks Danmokchang how he got the scars on his wrist. Showing his wrist, he explains the scars are from when he was caught trying to escape after being forced to sleep on the cold ground in Shinsan. A flashback shows him tied up as he explains the marks remained after being bound for days, leaving Yona horrified that they'd do that to a child. Clenching her fists in anger and guilt, she whispers that this is all her fault. She suddenly grabs him, and a surprised Danmokchang asks what's wrong and if she is crying. Denying that she's crying, she claims it's just dust in her eyes, and asks to take a closer look at his scars. A tiny chibi Damokchang shyly agrees, telling her to take her time. She gently blows on his wounded wrist to soothe the pain. She carefully examines his wrist while he watches her with a concerned expression. Smiling kindly, Yona says she'll do this for now since there's no medicine, and a blushing Damokchang looks on. He quietly thanks her as she holds his hands, but the moment is shattered when a door slides open with a loud swish, revealing a blood-spattered figure. It's the other boy, looking just like Dan Mokbe, standing with a blank expression, his face and clothes stained with blood. Yona cries out, "Young master!" as Dan Mokchang stares, realizing the boy with his face must be his brother. Yona rushes to the bloodied boy, asking where he's been and expressing how worried she was. She gestures to his disheveled state, then points accusingly at Dan Mokchang. The bloody Dan Mokbe stands in the doorway, coldly ordering Dan Mokchang to get out immediately. Glaring intensely, Dan Mokbe declares that this room is a private space meant only for him and Yeon. From over Yona's shoulder, Dan Mokbe repeats his possessive claim. Only he and Yeon are allowed here. Dan Mokchang stares back, utterly confused by the command. Yona quickly intervenes, shouldering the blame for letting him in without permission. Looking down, she apologizes for entering without asking first. Dan Mokchang accepts the dismissal and turns to leave, saying he'll be on his way. Dan Mokbe, covered in blood, watches as his brother Dan Mokchang exits the room. Yona asks the young master if he was too harsh on his own brother, but he simply calls her name Yan. Startled and blushing, she asks what's wrong, a sudden, horrifying thought dawning on her about the source of his wounds. A decorative blue and purple title card for the series is shown. In a flashback, a pained Dan Mokbe lies in bed, groaning from his injuries. The Lord looks down at him, remarking that there are still many things that need to be refined. He muses that Dan Mokbe exudes an immense force unlike his own plain childhood, making it pointless to hide his name or power. The Lord is confident that this boy will elevate the Danmok family to the center of the martial world. Turning to the overseer, the Lord orders him to get rid of the boy's bloody rags and dress him in new clothes. The overseer approaches the injured Dan Mokbe, relieved that the family head has finally acknowledged him and thinking his suffering is over. Continuing the flashback, Dan Mokbe defiantly rejects the overseer's help, clutching his blood-stained robes. The Lord looks on with a stern expression, questioning the boy's defiance. The Lord tells the overseer that Dan Mokbe hasn't been disciplined enough, but the overseer pleads on the boy's behalf, explaining his solitary life. The overseer begs for forgiveness, noting the boy never learned proper manners, which the Lord seems to accept as a valid point. The Lord orders Dan Mokbe to the main house to learn what he's lacking, but as the boy tries to refuse, the overseer covers his mouth and agrees for him. Trusting the overseer to handle it, the Lord walks away as the man promises to take care of everything. In a cute chibi panel, the overseer sighs while hugging the struggling Dan Mokbe. The chibi struggle intensifies as Dan Mokbe cries out, trying to escape the overseer's firm grip. Back in the present, Dan Mokbe weakly protests against the overseer, insisting he will not stay in the main house. The overseer questions his stubbornness, and Dan Mokbe explains he's happy just living with Yeon. With a determined look, Dan Mokbe declares their life is content and tells the overseer not to interfere. The overseer challenges him, asking if he's truly thinking of we or just himself. He reminds Dan Mokbe of how Yeona serves him all alone, handling the laundry, cleaning, and cooking by herself. The overseer argues that moving to the main house is an opportunity for both of them, as Yeona would have more help and suffer less. Pleading with him to consider the future, the overseer's words cause Dan Mokbe to clench his fist in conflicted silence. A burst of blue energy emanates from Dan Mokbe as he suddenly decides he'll go help, shocking the overseer. As the overseer's words about this being an opportunity for them both echo, Dan Mokbe appears overwhelmed. He thinks to himself that he doesn't want Yeon to suffer either, but he still seems hesitant. A moment passes, represented by floating specks of light. In the present, Yeona asks if the head of the family really told him to come to the main house. Dan Mokbe, his back to her, confirms that he did. He turns, blushing, and admits he doesn't want to go because he wants to stay with her. Shaking her head, Yona sternly tells him that people can't just live together like that forever. Danmokbi jealously protests that he doesn't want to see her being kind to others, but she reassures him that's not an issue. Yona resolves internally that Danmokbi can't stay in this place forever, despite being slightly bothered by his possessiveness. She believes that with love and recognition, he won't become a villain, before calling for young Master Danmokbi from outside a door. Announcing her intrusion, she enters the room where he and Yona are waiting. Wait, she's already with him. It seems someone else has arrived. 3 female servants stand before Yeona and Danmokbi, ready to escort them. In a flashback, a younger Danmokchang marvels at the beautiful main house estate. He remembers a young Yeona magically healing a wound on his wrist. Smiling at the memory, Danmokchang recalls her warmth and wishes they could meet again. Oof. Back in the present, his pleasant memory is shattered as he's shoved forward, crying out in pain. He stumbles to the ground as a harsh voice scolds him for not watching where he was going. Looking up, Danmokchang is stunned to see the eye patch-wearing lord, his father. In a separate scene, a young man who appears to be an older Danmokchang learns from a servant that his younger sibling is arriving at the main house today. He reacts with shock and concern, wondering about the child. He watches his father, the lord, from a distance. The lord turns and coldly tells Danmokchang that he has become useless now, leaving the boy speechless. A servant opens the doors to a grand room, telling Yona and Danmokbi this is where they'll be staying. Yona is in absolute awe, amazed by the beautiful and luxurious room. Annoyed, she wonders how such a lavish room exists while theirs was so poor, before a servant tells her to come change clothes. She eagerly agrees to change into her new attire. Yona beams, delighted with her high-quality new servant's outfit, confirming for the maid that it fits perfectly. As the maid begins to speak, she reaches for a cloth item from Yona's belongings. Yona gasps in shock as the maid pulls out Beiko, the white tiger plushie. The maid declares animals aren't allowed, but Yona frantically explains that it's the young master's cat. She quickly snatches the plushie back, hugging it protectively. Clutching the now angry-looking plushie, Yona smiles as it silently fumes about being left behind. The maid instructs Yona to follow her to learn her new duties, and she happily agrees. Yona stands ready, her expression determined as she prepares for her new life at the main house. A defiant Danmokbi rejects the servant's attempts to help him change his bloody clothes, insisting he doesn't need their help. Alone, he thinks about how unsettling the sudden kindness is, concluding that he hates this unfamiliar room and everything about it. Yona looks on with a worried, speechless expression. FWIP. He quickly turns away from her, a question mark appearing as he seems startled by her presence. Suddenly, a man's large hand grabs Yona and lifts her up, much to her and Danmokbi's shock. Just kidding. It was Yona energetically spreading out a large quilt on the floor, proudly announcing she's finished. She pats the fresh bedding, telling a bewildered Danmokbi to please lie down here. He questions lying on the floor, but Yona lies down herself to show him how. She asks if it feels like their old room, where they used to stay together. She reminisces about their past, recalling they always lay on the floor since there wasn't a bed. She recalls how they talked and enjoyed themselves, hoping to make the unfamiliar place feel cozy for him. Lying beside him, she tells him she understands how he's feeling right now. She continues, explaining that many more changes are coming and he needs to get used to the new environment. She assures him he's no longer the little kid trapped there, and after a moment of thought, he quietly agrees. Startled, she listens as he adds a condition. For the time being, Yan has to stay by his side because he doesn't want anyone else. A blushing Yeona agrees, but just for a while, admitting to herself she can't help being kind to Danmokbi. As he rests on her lap, she internally sighs about what to do with a spoiled brat, but notes he's only like this with her. She gently pats his clothes, thinking that even so, she's really happy he values her so much. The scene transitions with a soft, floral background. Yona looks at the grand estate doors, thinking to herself, wow, really? Surrounded by servants. she observes that the main house is incredibly different. She realizes all the chores she used to handle alone are now shared among dozens of servants. But this means she has absolutely nothing to do, a fact she seems to find more distressing than relieving. Whenever she tries to do something, Danmokbi insists she stay by his side to accompany him. She thinks back on her new routine, taking walks in the garden with a young master. She recalls spending her time grooming Beiko the plushie and feeding it sardines, pondering if she should try a new bow today. Wah! She realizes with a jolt that, thinking back, all she's really done is play around. Frantically holding her head, she worries that if she keeps being idle, she'll lose something essentially human. Danmokbi blushes, telling her she doesn't need to help with work because he came to the main house to stop her from doing such things. He insists he can't stand to see her work, but she inwardly protests that she can't stand being lazy, feeling like a useless cog. She decides that since the young master stepped away, she'll go help with some work. As she walks off, a sharp voice calls out, "Hey, you!" Yona turns to a black-haired servant and asks if she was called, and the servant confirms it. The servant, flanked by two others, scoffs at Yeona for relying on the young master and doing nothing while everyone else is busy. Bewildered by the sudden hostility, Yona wonders what this situation is all about. An unseen person shouts, "You!" as she looks on, startled. The lead servant glares, ominously telling Yona to come out with them. Whack! The servant violently shoves her to the ground, causing her to cry out in pain. The three servants loom over her, tauntingly asking if she thinks she's special just because she sticks by the young master. As the servants drone on, Yona puffs her cheeks, thinking to herself that they're just jealous in the end. She tells the shocked servant that she's an adult but can't even understand something so simple, enraging the woman. Yona argues that the young master is just leaning on someone familiar in a new place, but the servant dismisses her big talk as an older Danmokchang peeks around a corner. The older Danmokchang watches with a concerned expression, overhearing the confrontation. The servant scolds Yeona for acting high and mighty, but Yeona retorts that she's 9 years old, 2 years older than the young master. Shocked, the servant can't believe Yona doesn't know the young master's age, just as a calm voice calls out, "You there." The older Danmokchang steps into view, asking the servants what all the commotion is about. He stares down the servants with a stern, unyielding gaze. Walking alongside the older Danmokchang, Yona thanks him for getting her out of that troublesome situation. She laughs, recounting how funny it was that the bullies immediately started groveling and begging for forgiveness as soon as he appeared. The older Danmokchang asks if this kind of bullying happens often, but she reassures him it's her first time and not to worry. After a moment of thought, Yona spots Danmokbi and blushingly calls out to the young master. Sitting together, she offers him a snack she saved, and he happily agrees that it's delicious. Beaming, Yona clasps her hands together and thanks him for enjoying her gift. Puffed, Danmokbi lets out a laugh, and a surprised Yeona asks him why he's laughing. He smiles warmly, explaining it's nothing, just that he finds her praise for such a small thing strange. Ta-da, Tilde. Yona suddenly remembers something and excitedly shows him her wrist, announcing it's completely healed since he blew on it. A close-up shows her hand, sparkling and completely free of any injury. She gasps in wide-eyed amazement, realizing her wound truly did heal. Pondering for a moment, she wonders if she could use the healing incantation again, admitting that she can't control the power. A blushing Danmokbi shyly asks if she could blow on him again, prompting her to ask if he's hurt somewhere. He clutches his chest, explaining that he isn't hurt, but the area aches whenever he sees his father growing colder. He confesses that she's the only one he can rely on now that his father won't even call a doctor for him. As Yona thinks of how Danmokchang has been cast aside, an image of their cruel father flashes in her mind as she thinks how dare he treat his own sons like chess pieces. Her thoughts continue as she looks at a chess piece, declaring their father isn't a parent or even human. Yona stands up decisively, telling the young master not to worry. A promise echoes as she vows to blow on his pain 100, or even 1,000 times if necessary. With a hand to her chest, she passionately reaffirms her commitment to helping him. Touched and flustered, Damokbi quietly asks if 1,000 times might be too much. Yona playfully insists she can do it 10,000 times, but he tells her just once is enough. He walks away, muttering under his breath about her being so annoyingly persistent. In a flashback, Danmokbi recalls his father, Danmoksu, mocking his journey to summon a divine beast as ridiculous nonsense. He remembers rejecting his father's plan, determined to grow stronger with Danmok's ultimate sword technique instead. The memory of his father's bewildered face makes him realize the clan head didn't even know the family's secret technique existed. Back in the present, Danmokbi clenches his fist, realizing he's been manipulated all this time, and thinks of Yeon. Whoosh! A sudden rush of movement or thought fills the panel. He turns, looking for Yona and calling her name. As he wonders where she went, Yona pops out from behind him with a cheerful greeting. She asks if he had a good time, but he stops her, asking where she went and admitting he was worried. He then asks about the plate she is holding, and she hesitates to answer. Thinking he wouldn't like hearing that she met Danmok-chang, she lies and says she went to eat by herself, which he questions. He calls her name, his tone shifting. With a soft expression, he reassures her that he would never get mad at her. He pulls her close, his eyes turning cold as he warns that while he wouldn't be mad at her, he won't leave anyone unscathed who makes her lie. Shocked by his intense threat, Yeona looks up and whispers, "Young master." She scolds him for saying such frightening things, pulling on his cheeks and reminding him to only use his strength for good as he groans. Touching his now red cheek, a flustered Danmokbi says he was just worried about her. Yona retorts that she's more worried about him doing something so scary. Looking down with a blush, he apologizes and asks if she's really angry with him. She turns her back to him, quietly saying that she's not mad.
He thinks to himself that her cute face makes him feel weak, but reminds himself that she's still a child.
Yona asks if it's true that he's older than her, leaving him looking utterly confused. Recalling his previous joke about being 7, Yona panics, wondering if he thinks she actually believed him. Danmokbi wonders if she truly sees him as that young, which would explain why she always treats him like a child. He pouts, and his strange reaction prompts a confused question from Yeona. He blushes deeply, a sudden realization dawning on him. Yona asks him directly if he's really older than her, as a small note mentions her own age. Her shock grows as she asks if he's older by a whole 2 years. She states in complete disbelief that he's actually 11 years old. As a blushing Danmokbi thinks that he doesn't look his age, Yeona frantically denies that she's trying to hurt his feelings.
She quickly backpedals, comically fawning over how totally reliable he looks for an 11-year-old.
Yona reminds herself that she needs to stop treating him like a child, though she doubts she can. As night falls over the estate, a plan is set to return to the sacred mountain at daybreak. A stern, gray-haired man in a green robe orders a young, blue-haired boy to pack, but the boy is confused, stating they just arrived. The stern man grits his teeth, angrily calling out the name Danmok-chang. Leaning in menacingly, the man accuses a startled Danmok-chang of mocking him. Danmok-chang hastily agrees to prepare, and his father reflects that while this fear is expected, another boy had looked at him with defiant confidence. The father fumes, calling Danmokbi an arrogant brat and vowing to make him regret turning down the chance to seal the divine beast. Tap. Standing alone by a door, Danmok-chang realizes his father only intended to take his brother from the start. He reflects sadly that his father only called for him to be a replacement. Shaking off his despair, he tells himself, this is a golden opportunity for him. He envisions earning his father's approval by successfully sealing the divine beast. A small, purple-haired girl in a witch's hat looks sad while holding a plushie. Standing on a balcony, Danmok-chang admits he's disappointed to be parting ways with that girl. He fondly recalls the simple joys of laughing, chatting, and eating with her. Realizing he's only ever received things from her, he wishes he could give her a gift before he leaves. Walking outside at night with a bundle of purple cloth, he's grateful to have some silk left in his quarters. He thinks about how her plain clothes always bothered him and imagines the silk will make a much better outfit for her. Smiling as he thinks any clothes would suit her, his thoughts are cut short by a voice ordering him to stop. Dan Mukbi appears before him, dressed in white with a sheathed sword, and commands him not to move. Sternly, Dan Mukbi warns him not to take a single step forward. Dan Mukbi confronts him, asking what he's doing out so late, and a nervous Dan Mokchang explains he came to give a gift. Dan Mukbi asks if the gift is for Yeon, and Dan Mokchang confirms, admitting he owes her a lot. Dan Mukbi coldly dismisses the gesture, telling him to go back, leaving a blushing Dan Mokchang to protest that he has no right to decide. Dan Mukbi explains that Yen simply enjoys helping people and didn't treat him specially, again telling him to leave. Dan Mukbi stands protectively between Dan Mokchang and the path, as a flustered Dan Mokchang admits he knows, but can't find the words to continue. Dan Mukbi suddenly changes the subject, pointedly asking Dan Mokchang if he is strong. Declaring his sole desire is to protect her, Dan Mukbi belittles Dan Mokchang, stating he can't even protect himself, let alone Yeon. Dan Mukbi tells Dan Mokchang to leave Yeon's happiness to him and to stop worrying about her. Clutching the gift, Dan Mokchang sadly concedes that he can't argue with that. Resigned, he decides to go back, seeing no point in giving the gift now. With Bae Yankyo perched on his shoulder, Dan Mukbi is asked if he was too harsh on his brother, to which he replies, "Quiet." Dan Mukbi vows to make Yeon happy with his own hands, providing her with a warm home and delicious food. Imagining her sleeping peacefully and eating happily, he promises to give her everything she wants. He pictures a smiling, beautifully dressed Yeona, reaffirming his promise to ensure she gets everything she desires. Baeko, watching from his shoulder, realizes with certainty that this is no mere childish bluff. The small tiger understands Dan Mukbi is willing to risk his own life to ensure Yeon's happiness. In a childish pout, Dan Mukbi declares no one else will give her an outfit before he does. As Baeko notes, a bit of immaturity remains. The next day, Yeona and Dan Mukbi watch the estate's commotion, and he explains that the clan head is returning to the sacred mountain. Yeona is surprised to hear him refer to the man as the head instead of father, and asks if he's leaving already. She asks if he's leaving with his twin brother, Dan Mokchang, and her question is met with surprise. Yeona looks down sadly, realizing she never even got a chance to say goodbye. Seeing her regret, Dan Mukbi gives her permission to go, surprising her with his unexpected kindness. Excited, Yeona tells Dan Mukbi to follow slowly as she rushes ahead to say her goodbyes. Baeko trots beside Dan Mukbi, expressing surprise at his change of heart after being so cold to Dan Mokchang the previous night. As Dan Mukbi watches Yeona run, he realizes that stopping her now might cause her to truly hate him. With a solemn gaze, he decides that is something he does not want. Yeona runs frantically toward the main gate, desperately hoping Dan Mokchang hasn't left yet. Huffing and puffing, she sprints through the courtyard, giving it her all. She skids to a halt, arriving just in time to see a group of riders, including Dan Mokchang, leaving the estate. Slumping in disappointment, she realizes she arrived just a little too late. Yeona muses that she's feeling this way because they parted without a proper goodbye. A memory or vision shows a blue-haired man from behind, seemingly walking away against a bright sky. The scene focuses on two hands gently clasping, representing a tender moment of connection. A cute, purple-haired chibi character appears in a brief, promotional interlude. Phew! In a lavish room, Yeona sighs with contentment, then beams as she declares cleaning is the best stress relief. Kneeling on the floor, she reflects that it's been 5 years since she arrived in this world and she is now 14, her focus immediately broken by a tiny speck of dust.
With hands on her hips, she wonders where to clean next, unaware that a young man is watching her.
The young man grabs her arm, urgently asking what she is doing and warning her of the trouble she'll be in if the young master finds out. She laughs dismissively, reassuring him that it's fine since the young master is busy training and will never know. Whoa. Her fellow servant drags her away, insisting the young master has sharp instincts and demanding she come out immediately. Now standing outside a closed door, Yeona sadly realizes she was kicked out of the room. She sulks about being interrupted while mopping, as an unseen Baeko asks what she can really do about it. An internal thought explains that ever since Dan Mokbi caught the head of the house's attention, everyone is busy keeping an eye on him. Baeko the plushie reasons it's because the young master is strong, but then huffs, realizing that wasn't a compliment. Holding the fuming plushie, Yeona is told she's too soft on Dan Mokbi and should be tougher, leaving her to think how unbelievable he is. Yeona cuddles Baeko, wondering why he's still a kitten after 5 years, while he demands she pay attention to him. She playfully suggests a trip to the general, but he insists on going alone. An older man with the goatee and mustache spots her, calling out, "Oh, Yeon, you're here!" The man, holding a brush over a scroll, calmly instructs her to sit in front of him. Yeona obediently sits down with Baeko in her lap. A quiet moment passes as she sits attentively before the older man. Confused, Yeona asks why she was called, only for the man to say there was no reason, shocking her. He explains that the young master, worried she would end up doing menial tasks if left alone, asked him to keep her here. Yeona complains that the young master is being too much, insisting she is not a child.
Cuddling Baeko, she internally fumes that at 14,
the older man's expression darkens as he seems to ponder the word marriage. He tells Yeon he trusts her to act within her means, regardless of what the young master says, leaving her puzzled. He clarifies that his words stem from his worry for her. Yeona understands his unspoken advice. Avoid a romantic relationship with Dan Mokbi, especially since Dan Mokbi is now 16 and nearing marriage discussions. Sitting on a balcony holding a very grumpy Baeko, she quietly contemplates this warning. Realizing the original story is about to begin, she gets excited at the thought of watching Damok-chang meet the female lead. She daydreams happily about the unfolding plot, much to the exasperation of the man sitting nearby. The man sighs that Yeon is truly a free spirit, while she internally fires back that he was the one who summoned her. He sighs that he's busy and asks her not to joke, while she mischievously thinks of interrupting him further. The man mentions that the young master is due to return soon, and Yeona quickly asks when Danmok-chang is coming back. When he replies that he is returning today, Yeona is stunned into silence. Walking through a village, Yeona reasons that since Lord Baeko is safe, the divine beast's seal must have failed. With a sad expression, she laments how unfortunate it is that Danmok-chang must have suffered in Sinshan. She resolves to cook him a delicious meal to lift his spirits, just as a voice asks about her plan. An older Danmokbi appears, smiling as he says everything she makes is delicious, startling Yeona, who calls out his name. As he walks past, he casually asks if she did anything weird while he was away. He turns back, taking her hand and pressing for an example of what weird things she might have done. He inspects her hands, teasingly suggesting she might have been cleaning the floors with them, causing her to blush. Flustered, she quickly denies having done any such thing. Gasp! He gives her a suspicious look, clearly not convinced, which makes her nervous. In a fond flashback, Danmokbi complains that she used to follow him everywhere as a child, but now only nags him, though she seems to have no idea what he's talking about. Changing the subject, Yeona asks about his talk with the head of the house, and he reveals he's been ordered to a martial arts competition in Habuk. She reacts with shock, questioning his destination. She recalls that Habuk is controlled by the martial alliance leader, Panga, and feels confident that Danmokbi is certain to win. She imagines his incredible talent attracting countless people who will want to support his growth. Her thoughts culminate in a vision of Danmokbi becoming a skilled and respected martial artist, finally escaping his fate as a villain. Walking beside Danmokbi, Yeona asks when the young master plans to leave for the competition. As Yeona daydreams about packing generously for his trip, Danmokbi flatly declares, "I'm not going." His unexpected refusal leaves Yeona utterly baffled. She presses him, asking why he's giving up a chance to show his strength, but he simply begins to explain with, "Because." Danmokbi turns to her with a slight blush, confessing, "I prefer being with you." A promotional chibi appears, while Danmokbi's heartfelt confession, "Because I prefer being with you," hangs in the air. Wham! Yeona is completely flustered by his direct and unexpected reason, her face flushing bright red. Stuttering, she asks for the real reason, but he insists he's serious, revealing he was already uneasy about leaving her alone. He adds that, after hearing about the earlier bullying incident, he can't be reassured of her safety. The scene flashes back to a few hours ago, showing Dan Mokbe training fiercely with his sword. The memory continues, showing the swift, powerful arcs of his blade as he practices. Phew! After a vigorous session, he sheathes his sword, satisfied with his morning training. While he's away, he imagines Yona happily embracing a laundry pile, thinking she can finally do the household chores she loves. Realizing he must stop her, he starts to head back, but stops short as he overhears a shocking discussion. Young Master Dan Mokbe is getting married. A stern man with his dark hair tied up is seen, seemingly orchestrating the marriage plans. Dan Mokbe listens from the doorway as two men discuss his engagement, noting that despite his indifference to women, he keeps a certain maid by his side. The stern man sighs in frustration, declaring that her behavior is intolerable. He internally accuses her of clinging to Dan Mokbe and forgetting her place in a scheme to become the lady of the house. Picturing Yeona and Dan Mokbe together, he grits his teeth, calling the sight an eyesore. As Dan Mokbe listens in horror, the men debate what to do, suggesting they slowly remove her from his side before the stern man decides on a more direct approach. The man declares their plan to cut off her breath completely and quietly dispose of her once Dan Mokbe leaves for Habuk. The man laughs, convinced Dan Mokbe will instantly forget the useless maid when surrounded by beautiful women, enraging the eavesdropping Dan Mokbe. Blushing with rage, Dan Mokbe internally vows to show the man what happens to anyone who dares to touch Yeon. His murderous thoughts escalate to slitting the man's throat before he gasps, horrified at his own violent impulse. He slides to the floor, reeling as he wonders, "What the hell am I thinking?" He realizes that if he acts on his rage, Yeon will be deeply disappointed and might even leave his side out of fear. Crushed by this thought, he collapses, knowing he absolutely cannot let that happen. Back in the present, Yeona sits in a peaceful garden with Bayeko, letting out a heavy sigh. Bayeko asks why she's sighing, and she quietly laments that it's such a waste of the young master's incredible skill. She reflects on his dedication to training, confused as to why he would refuse to participate in the tournament. She can't forget the firm, unyielding attitude he had when he refused. In a flashback, she confirms if he's really not going, and Dan Mokbe states that his answer will be the same no matter how many times she asks. He explains he's worried something might happen to her while he's away, but she dismisses his fears, assuring him she'll be fine inside the house. He continues with a list of increasingly specific anxieties, from her getting hurt, moving things, to injuring her hand, preparing cat food, leaving her speechless. A chibi Yeona mumbles that he's a classic N-type personality, while a confused chibi Dan Mokbe asks if MBTI is a new sword technique. A tiny, flustered Yeona quickly insists that it's not that. Sighing, Yeona sits under a tree with Bayeko, feeling guilty that she's the one holding him back with his overprotective worries. Suddenly, a voice calls out her name. Yeon! Startled, she sees someone approaching and wonders why the young master is back so soon from training. She sees the back of a man with long, dark hair tied in a high ponytail, wearing a white and green robe. Huh? She looks at the man in confusion, realizing something is different. As he turns to face her, she realizes this isn't Dan Mokbe and recognizes the other young master. She calls out to young master Dan Mokchang, who smiles warmly, pleased that she remembers him. Overjoyed by the reunion, Yeona exclaims how long it's been and playfully scolds him for leaving without saying goodbye. Dan Mokchang apologizes sincerely, explaining that he never knew they would be apart for so long. He then asks her to stop calling him young master and just call him Chang, but she immediately protests that she'd get in big trouble. Looking downcast, he explains that it's fine because he has already fallen out of his father's favor and is now a person without ties. Yeona looks at him with a sad and worried expression. Her heart aches for Dan Mokchang as she wonders what hardships he endured in Sinshan to change so much, wanting to find a way to help him. Growl. The serious mood is broken by a loud stomach growl from a deeply embarrassed and blushing Dan Mokchang. growl. Mortified, the blushing Danmok Chang stammers that the sound wasn't his stomach, but his feet dragging on the ground. A chibi Danmok Chang shuffles his feet to demonstrate his flimsy excuse to a deadpan chibi Yona. He gasps, still flustered, as Yona stares at him with a neutral expression. As he tries to speak, Yona cuts him off, calling out, "Young master." She faces him directly, asking if he can do something for her, much to his blushing surprise. Brightly, she asks him a very important question. How many potatoes can he eat right now? Her eyes sparkle with a determined smile, ready to feed him. Presented with a large bowl of potatoes, a blushing Danmok Chang wonders if he can really eat them all himself. Yona hands him the bowl, and after one bite, he declares it's the taste he's missed since Sinshan, much to her relief. He asks what she meant by a while, and she explains that Danmokbi has forbidden her from doing any household chores. Danmok Chang smiles, glad she doesn't have to suffer, and reflects that his younger brother is keeping his connections intact, unlike him. He comments that his brother must really like her, but Yeona denies it, claiming Danmokbi simply trusts her. Danmok Chang looks at her thoughtfully, pondering her words before making a suggestion. He explains that his father has allowed him to choose a servant to accompany him and asks her to be that servant, leaving Yeona stunned. He formally asks her to join him, stating his father's offer. Yona is bewildered, wondering why out of everyone he would choose her. A golden light signifies her realization that he must have no one else in the family to rely on. She worries that siding with him would anger Danmokbi and worsen the brothers' relationship. Seeing her hesitation, Danmok Chang quickly apologizes for his unreasonable request and tells her to forget it. Yona quickly stops him, insisting she was just considering his offer for a moment. As he pauses at the door, he says it's fine. He turns back with a gentle smile, content with just being able to meet her from time to time. As night falls over a rooftop, a sense of foreboding hangs in the air. Leaving the room, Yona walks down a hallway, still worried about Danmok Chang. Suddenly, Danmokbi's voice calls her name, and she turns in surprise, asking if he's already done with his training. He confirms that he has already finished his bath as well. Yona apologizes for not being there to assist him, but he calmly states that he's not a child anymore. Danmokbi wonders what kept her so busy, then realizes Danmok Chang's return must be the reason she went to see him. He imagines her reaching out a warm hand to his brother, just as she does with him. His expression turns cold and resentful as he thinks to himself, I don't like it. He summons Yeona, telling her he has something to say and asking her to sit down. He informs her that he's decided to participate in the martial arts competition after all. Yona is overjoyed by his announcement, her eyes wide with shock and excitement. She enthusiastically praises his decision, thrilled that he can finally show the world his true potential. As she celebrates, Danmokbi calmly adds that there is one condition. He reveals his condition. He will only go if she accompanies him, just the two of them, leaving her stunned. He questions her shocked reaction, asking if she doesn't want to see him in action, which she quickly denies, insisting that she does. She suggests bringing more people, feeling it would be awkward for them to travel alone, but he firmly rejects the idea, stating he only needs her.
He reminds her of her past promise to go out with him once he was healthy, showing a flashback of them as children.
The warm flashback continues, showing them at a festival as she daydreams about buying things they want. Leaning in close, he asks if she forgot that promise, causing her to blush and admit it feels a little strange now. A flustered chibi Yeona looks away, her cheeks bright red. She worries that traveling alone with him could complicate any potential marriage talks he might have. Danmokbi turns away, declaring that he kept his promise while she turned out to be a liar, prompting her to quickly deny it. He turns back with a victorious smirk, asking if that means she'll go with him, leaving Yeona utterly bewildered at how she was cornered. She nervously asks when they are leaving, only to be shocked when he replies, tomorrow morning. He warns her that it would be a problem if she changes her mind, leaving her speechless and trapped. Sweating, a chibi Yeona realizes she's walked straight into Danmokbi's clever trap. The scene shifts to a dark room where a beaten man with a bloody mouth is berated for failing again. A man in a red and black robe looms over two defeated figures, questioning if their zombie research is a failure or a test of his patience. A determined young man named Hyo Jung-yuk, young master of the blood sect, pleads for someone's trust. The failed researcher collapses, stammering about what he's learned, while the man in the red robe scoffs that a strong martial artist's body will just resist the curse. Lying on the floor, the defeated researcher thinks to himself, but as he coughs and cries, he insists that nothing is impossible for his young master. Hyo Jung-hyuk appears with a menacing grin, asking how the man dared to try and trick him. A silver-haired man dismisses the researcher with a blast of energy, sparing him as a special exception. The silver-haired man tells Dan Mokbi to save his gratitude for the righteous sect and mentions an upcoming martial arts competition. As Dan Mokbi listens, the silver-haired man explains skilled martial artists will gather in Habuk, revealing he plans to capture them there. A woman with dark hair tied back reacts in shock as the silver-haired man declares he will go himself. The silver-haired man smirks confidently, hoping to find at least one person among them who can entertain him. At the family estate, Dan Mokbi's father sees him off, approving of his decision to head to Habuk. The father encourages Dan Mokbi to win first place and crush the families who have looked down on them. Turning away abruptly, the father declares that he will handle another matter himself. As their journey begins, Dan Mokbi tells Yeona it's time to go, and she readily agrees. The father's face twists in rage as he seethes internally. How dare he! Exclamation mark. Quote, embracing Dan Mokbi, Yeona thinks that if he wins, she will forgive his arrogance. A blindfolded servant worriedly asks the father if it's okay for Yeona to be so close to the young master, but he is told not to worry. The father smirks, revealing that he has already made his own arrangements. A powerful force slices through a rocky, forested landscape. Whoosh! Baeko leaps through the air with Dan Mokbi and Yeona riding on his back. Surrounded by yellow flowers, Yeona looks back in utter amazement. As they race through the trees, Yeona marvels at Baeko's speed, but Dan Mokbi teasingly asks if that's all it takes to impress her. Baeko thinks to himself that this display of speed is nothing compared to the true awe he has shown before. Yeona recalls a less-than-awesome moment where a chibi Baeko demanded snacks and pets. A chibi Baeko asks why she's quiet, and she quickly claims she was just in awe of his majesty. Back in the present, Yeona worries about what might happen if someone sees them traveling together like this. Dan Mokbi begins to explain that the path to Habuk is divided into two main routes. He chooses the rugged, remote forest shortcut, ensuring they will be the only ones on the path. Yeona looks up at him with a puzzled expression. Noticing it's beginning to rain, Dan Mokbi decides they will seek shelter in a large nearby cave. Yeona asks if he's been to this area before, but he confirms he has not. Baeko explains that as a divine beast, the local animals respect him and will guide them to safety. With confidence, Baeko announces that the forest creatures will lead them to a shelter from the rain. Yeona looks on with a blush, surprised and intrigued that the animals will guide them. She praises Baeko as the Lord of the Mountain, and he happily encourages her to keep the compliments coming. Upon reaching a lush cave, Yeona expresses her amazement while Dan Mokbi states he's glad they found a place to rest. She points excitedly, having discovered the remains of an old campsite inside the cave. Happily gathering firewood, Yeona expresses her relief that the path isn't completely deserted. She beams, excited to start a fire and finally get warm. Crackle! As the fire roars to life, Dan Mokbi confusedly calls out Yeona's name.
He asks what she is doing as she begins to remove her outer robe.
A flustered Dan Mokbi is stunned when a chibi Yeona cheerfully announces she's taking off her clothes. Yeona explains she will catch a cold in her wet clothes and innocently urges a blushing Dan Mokbi to take his off too. Mortified, Dan Mokbi turns away, insisting he can undress himself while Yeona stands behind him in her undergarments.
He panics internally, wondering at her comfort around him, while finding her wet hair and clothes incredibly provocative.
Clutching his collar, a beet-red Dan Mokbi struggles with his thoughts, finding everything about her completely overwhelming. Now in dry clothes, Yeona happily stretches out on Baeko's back by the fire. A blushing Danmokbi sheepishly invites her to come lie down. Yeona suggests they use Bako's fur to dry off, but Danmokbi sternly reminds her not to use a divine beast like a towel. Lying by the fire, Yeona wonders why Danmokbi is acting so strangely, concluding he must be tired. Inside the cave, Yeona playfully tries to pull Danmokbi to rest, but he resists, prompting her to call him stubborn. Whoosh! As she tugs on his robe, he loses his balance and trips forward. Ah! He falls to the ground with a cry, startling Yeona and immediately asking if she's all right. Peeking from behind his shoulder, Yeona assures him she's fine, thanking him for protecting her. A sudden blush spreads across her face as she realizes their proximity. Trapped beneath him, Yeona stares up in surprise as they lie face to face on the cave floor. Thump! The fire crackles beside them as the dust from their fall settles. In the warm glow of the fire, they gaze into each other's eyes, their hands clasped together. Lost in the moment, Yeona suddenly realizes how much Danmokbi has grown as he looks down at her, blushing furiously. She recalls his timid childhood image, which still lingers in her mind. Pondering this change, she flashes back to a time when she was the taller one. She concludes her thought, acknowledging that he's no longer the little kid who is smaller than her. Smiling warmly, she embraces the thought of his future, feeling a sense of happy anticipation. Whoosh! A flustered Danmokbi suddenly pushes himself away from her, stammering an apology. Sitting up, Yeona calmly reassures him that it's okay and was her own fault. Danmokbi scoots away to the other side of the fire, declaring he'll sleep there for the night. As a chibi Yeona wishes him good night, Danmokbi turns away, his face completely red with embarrassment. Yeona looks at him with concern, wondering if his strange behavior means he's still unwell. Danmokbi forces out a good night in return, thinking to himself how dangerous this situation feels. He realizes that seeing her smiling face so close was an overwhelming and dangerous moment for him. He sighs, lying on the ground and trying to calm his racing heart. The image of their close encounter replays in his mind, leaving him utterly flustered. The scene transitions, marking the end of the chapter. The next morning, Yeona and Danmokbi emerge from the cave with Baiko, and she marvels at the beautiful forest. A bright, sunny sky appears as she thinks how fortunate they are to have clear weather. Riding comfortably on Baiko, Yeona expresses her gratitude for having the divine beast with them on their journey. She imagines herself getting hopelessly lost and soaked in the rain without Baiko's guidance. Danmokbi tells her she's capable of navigating on her own, which leaves her looking surprised. Baiko reminds her of her latent word spirit ability, explaining that mastering it would make her the strongest in the world. Yeona admits she hopes to achieve that, but confesses she still doesn't know how to access her power. Her shoulders slump slightly as she looks down, feeling a bit discouraged by her uncertainty. Suddenly, both Danmokbi and Baiko stop, their expressions turning serious as they sense something amiss. A tiny chibi Baiko alerts Yeona that he senses a presence nearby, making her stop as well. She whirls around in alarm, asking if he's sure someone is there. Danmokbi draws his sword, his voice sharp as he commands the hidden person to show themselves. A red projectile slices through the air, forcing Danmokbi to leap back to avoid the sudden attack. A man with unruly hair and piercing red eyes emerges from the trees, smirking that they noticed him. The red-eyed man effortlessly dodges a counterattack, noting that Danmokbi is a fellow martial artist. Danmokbi points his sword at the stranger, demanding he reveal his identity immediately. The stranger coolly retorts, "Why should I tell you?" as the two face off with matching intensity. The stranger's hand glows with a sinister red aura as he recalls a sorcerer's words, "The more martial artists, the better." With a surge of power, he lunges at Danmokbi, his hand crackling with violent energy. Danmokbi struggles to defend himself, a strained and blushing expression on his face from the effort. Watching in horror, Yeona cries out her young master's name in a panic. The red-eyed man grins with satisfaction, commenting that Danmokbi is impressive and will make excellent material. Flustered, Danmokbi snaps back that he has no idea what his opponent is talking about. He tightens his grip on his sword, realizing this new foe is far more skilled than anyone he's fought before. As the red-eyed man stares him down with a confident smirk, Dan Mokbi grimly acknowledges his opponent's strength. Seeing that the stranger is unarmed, Dan Mokbi's hand begins to glow with his own energy. He grips his sword tightly, realizing he has a slight advantage, and prepares to press his attack. Whoosh! Unleashing his power, Dan Mokbi lunges forward, slashing at the red-eyed man with a brilliant blue aura. The red-eyed man maintains a confident, knowing smirk as the attack approaches. To his shock, Dan Mokbi freezes mid-strike, a blush of exertion and confusion on his face. The red-eyed man, Hyoel Junghyuk, looks on with a smug grin and asks how it feels. He taunts Dan Mokbi, asking about the sensation of being unable to move as he wishes. From a distance, Yona cries out in distress, watching helplessly as her young master is paralyzed. Baiko, in his small form, explains to a shocked Yona that their opponent is likely using quote, brainwashing. As Baiko speaks, a shadowy figure appears, representing the two forms of mind control techniques. Baiko elaborates that the techniques are verbal command and brainwashing, concluding this must be the latter as Yona listens intently. Yona has a horrifying realization, connecting the brainwashing and red eyes to one person, Hyoel Junghyuk, the young leader of the blood cult. She thinks it's a disaster to encounter a villain known for killing for sport in such a secluded area. As Yona frets over Dan Mokbi's safety, Hyoel Junghyuk inwardly debates breaking his disobedient captive's limbs and taking him. A blushing Dan Mokbi strains against the control as Hyeon Gark decides it's too much trouble and resolves to just kill him instead. Yona stares in shock, a green, leaf-shaped hairpin materializing in her hand with a sharp glint. Hyoel Junghyuk unleashes a violent red energy attack, vowing to make his opponent's death useful, but Yona screams for him to stop. Determined to save him, Yona declares she must break the brainwashing and yells for her young master not to be fooled by his words. With a powerful burst of energy, she throws the hairpin toward Hyoel Junghyuk. Flinch. The hairpin grazes Hyoel Junghyuk's cheek as Dan Mokbi is suddenly freed from the mental hold, gasping for air. An ethereal wind bursts forth as Hyoel Junghyuk and a blushing Dan Mokbi are blown back by the force of Yeona's power. Hyoel Junghyuk touches the blood on his cheek, genuinely surprised by the unexpected counterattack. Turning his piercing gaze to Yeona, he demands to know her identity. A blushing and flustered Yeona stammers that she is just a normal attendant. Hyoel Junghyuk scoffs at her claim, questioning how a normal person could break his brainwashing with a single word. Whisk! Dan Mokbi swiftly moves to stand between Yeona and Hyoel Junghyuk. Shielding her, Dan Mokbi glares at their foe, warning him not to approach Yeon any further. Hyoel Junghyuk's expression shifts from annoyance to intrigued amusement. He recognizes the weapon in Dan Mokbi's hand as a Danmok family sword. Deciding it would be a burden to kill him now, Hyoel Junghyuk declares he will deal with him in Habuk instead. With a final glance, he leaps away, vanishing into the treetops with incredible speed. Yona watches him leave with a look of immense relief, thinking to herself that he's gone. She rushes to Dan Mokbi to check if he's hurt, but he immediately pulls her into a tight embrace. Surrounded by flowers, Yona looks up with a surprised blush as he holds her close. Dan Mokbi asks if she was hurt, confessing he was terrified he wouldn't be able to protect her from what might happen. Pat, pat. He gently pats her back, comforting her after the frightening encounter. Snuggling into his chest, Yona reassures him that she's okay and safe because he protected her. Dan Mokbi blushes deeply as he calls her name and gently strokes her hair. He suddenly leans in close, causing Yeona to gasp in flustered surprise. As he moves even closer, she nervously asks what he's doing. With his heart pounding, Dan Mokbi whispers that he kept holding back all night. He declares that he can't hold back anymore as their faces are mere inches apart. Surrounded by glowing flowers, he apologizes to Yeona, repeating that he can no longer restrain himself after holding back all night. Yeona's eyes widen as she realizes, with a jolt, that he's about to kiss her. Just as their lips are about to meet, Baiko intervenes, demanding to know what they're doing and telling them to get moving. Tsuke chibi beko tsks disapprovingly, reminding them that their enemy could return at any moment. Snapping out of the moment, Yona agrees that they need to hurry. Danmokbi, smiling softly, offers to take her bag, and she thanks him. Baiko announces that the village is nearby as a blushing Yona reflects on what just almost happened between them. The scene transitions, showing the title card for the story. Yona gazes in awe at a bustling, beautiful city, exclaiming that they've finally arrived in Habuk. Standing beside her, Danmokbi smiles as she expresses her relief that they arrived safely, and he agrees. A blushing Yeona gazes at the cherry blossoms, noting how lively the streets are. Her thoughts drift to the bustling city as she remarks that she'd forgotten what this kind of liveliness was like. The scene transitions with a soft focus on white flowers, marking a gentle pause. Danmokbi calls out to Yeona, asking what she's thinking about. Yeona explains she was just admiring the streets, as it's her first time seeing a place like this, and Danmokbi admits it's his first time out as well. To keep her from getting lost in the crowd, Danmokbi takes her hand and tells her to follow him, which she agrees to with a flustered yes. A pensive Yeona looks on as Danmokbi begins to say something else. While holding her hand, Danmokbi asks if she would call him by his name instead of master during their time in Habuk. A blushing Yeona questions the propriety of calling him by his name, but he insists it's fine since no one there knows them. A chibi Danmokbi gives her puppy dog eyes, pleading with her, while a chibi Yeona looks overwhelmed. Hesitantly, a blushing Yeona agrees to his request if that's what he truly wants. Brightening up, Yeona tries out a name, asking, "Then how's this?" "Bia!" making a deeply blushing Danmokbi very happy. Overjoyed, Danmokbi confirms that it's okay and asks her to continue calling him that. A slightly confused Yeona looks at him as he leans closer, his ears glowing red. The narration notes that his ears have turned completely red from blushing. Yeona realizes his earlier actions weren't just out of relief from their recent danger. Hand in hand, the two walk together through the bustling city streets. A floral, light-filled panel transitions the scene. Bia tells Yeona he's going to register for the competition and asks her to wait for a moment, and she agrees. A cute chibi Bia promises he'll be back soon, and Yeona warmly tells him to take his time. Yeona hums to herself as she waits, looking around at the crowded streets. She overhears passers-by commenting on the impressive martial arts competition, noting the reception desk is full of people with powerful internal energy. Yeona smiles proudly, thinking her Bia is the best of them all, just as she overhears someone mention a contestant from Danmokse. Two men gossip about the weak Danmok family, mentioning a rumor that the only son will be participating. One of the men scoffs, picturing how pathetic the rookie must be, which causes Yeona's expression to harden with anger. The two men are startled by a sudden, "Hey!" from behind them. Yeona furiously confronts them, demanding to know how they dare speak ill of her master, prompting one of the men to ask what her problem is.
With her hands on her hips, a blushing Yeona retorts that she was about to ask them the same thing.
She scolds them for gossiping, asking if they have no shame as martial artists, while a chibi Beiko wonders about her fiery temper. Facing the two larger men, Yeona stands her ground as one of them defiantly says he isn't scared and will repeat his insults 100 times. The men call her a loser, claiming that people who talk big have no skills, and one of them angrily moves to grab her. The man grabs Yeona's arm, calling her a troublemaker, and threatening that getting rid of her would be no big deal. With a menacing glare, Bia appears and warns the men to get away from Yan immediately if they don't want to die. Surprised by his sudden appearance, the two bullies turn around, asking who the kid is. Yeona looks up in shock and relief, recognizing that young Master Danmok has returned. The man smirks, mockingly asking if Bia is the kid from the Danmok clan who just came out into the world. He continues his taunts, sneering that Bia clearly doesn't even know how to properly wield a sword yet. Whoosh. A powerful blue aura erupts from Bia, shocking the two men as they feel his incredible energy. As Bia glares at him, the bully thinks in disbelief how a mere brat could possess such immense power. Whoosh! The two bullies flee in terror, vowing to deal with him in the competition and telling him to consider himself lucky. Ichibi Aona watches them go, thinking to herself with an unimpressed look that even their escape is like a third-rate villain's. Bia immediately turns to Yeona, asking with concern if she's hurt anywhere. He apologizes for what happened and asks for an explanation, and Yeona begins to tell him. Yeona explains that the men were bad-mouthing him based on strange rumors, leaving Bia looking shocked. Devastated that she faced trouble because of him, Bia pulls her into a hug, telling her how glad he is that she's by his side. Smitten, Yeona wonders why he looks so beautiful when he smiles and asks why the men ran. Bia explains he released a bit of his inner energy. He elaborates that they felt his power and fled, which makes an excited Yeona compare it to a sudden, intimidating thump. Watching from a rooftop, Hyeoel Junghyuk realizes the strong inner energy he sensed must have come from that guy. He recalls their encounter in the forest, thinking that if Bia grows any stronger, his mind control won't work on him. Deciding against a confrontation, Hyeoel Junghyuk leaps away, resolving to hunt for some small fry instead. The two bullies are stunned by what just happened, with one questioning if they were mistaken about Bia being from a minor clan. From the shadows, a man with black hair and red eyes smirks, thinking he clearly felt Bia's power and considers him excellent material, unlike them. The bullies turn and angrily demand the man's identity, but he just smiles back mockingly. In a flash of motion, the red-eyed man lunges toward the two unsuspecting bullies. Ugh! With two swift strikes, he sends both men flying backward in pain. The red-eyed man calmly stands over one of the defeated men, who coughs weakly on the ground. He smiles with satisfaction, remarking to himself that the martial arts competition is proving to be fun. Covering one of the unconscious men with a blue cloth, he notes how nice it is to find such materials before the competition even starts. Grasping the man's robe, the red-eyed man's gaze intensifies as he says he's looking forward to the future. A shimmering, abstract panel transitions the scene to a new location. The scene opens inside an ornate, warmly lit room as someone begins to speak. Yeona, now in a beautiful pink and white dress, shyly asks Bia how she looks, causing him to blush deeply. Seeing his stunned silence, a worried Yeona asks if her new dress really looks that bad. Stuttering, Bia apologizes for staring, confessing that she's just so beautiful, which makes a flustered Yeona gasp in surprise. Yeona playfully retorts that he's the beautiful one, complimenting his long eyelashes and smooth skin, leaving a blushing Bia speechless. Bia decisively tells the shopkeeper to prepare the dress for her immediately, and the shopkeeper happily agrees as Yeona shouts in protest. Still trying to object, Yeona brings up the prohibitive price of the dress. Bia cuts her off, firmly stating that the price doesn't matter when it comes to her. A blushing Bia tells Yeona he would search the entire world to find anything she wants and asks her to name all her desires. Holding her hand gently, he continues his heartfelt promise, asking her to tell him everything she wants to see. He leans in with a gentle, blushing smile and asks for her agreement. Hand in hand, Bia and a blushing Yeona walk through the beautiful city streets in her new dress. Yeona happily tells him she had a wonderful day, and he expresses his relief, but then pauses before saying something else.
A blushing Bia gently reminds her that she promised to call him B, asking why she's reverted to calling him young master.
A flustered Yeona stammers, trying to find the right words to explain herself. She admits that while she went along with it before, suddenly changing how she addresses him feels awkward. Grasping her hand, Bia reassures her that it's okay and she doesn't have to force herself. He smiles warmly, telling her they'll be together from now on, so she has plenty of time to get used to it. A sudden shout of, "You guys!" interrupts their tender moment, startling them both. An angry, pouting Baeko appears, demanding to know how they dared to leave him behind for so long. HMPH! Yeona turns away playfully, as the little white tiger continues to sulk beside her. Yeona apologizes to Baeko, explaining pets weren't allowed and offers him a gift to cheer him up, which he cautiously agrees to consider. Having arrived back at their quarters, Yeona wishes the young master a good night as she stands outside his door. Bia smiles warmly at her and wishes her good night as well, promising to see her tomorrow. Back in her room, a determined Chibi Yeona clutches a stuffed Baiko doll. A Chibi Yeona thinks to herself how kind-hearted her young master is. Baiko asks how her day was, and she begins recounting how she and her master ate delicious food and saw amazing sights. She trails off, thinking that above all else, one thing stood out. She fondly remembers the warmth in Dan Mokbi's gaze as he looked at her, a memory she can't forget. Lying in her bed, Yeona realizes that the look he gave her was certainly the gaze one gives to a person they love. Overwhelmed and blushing furiously, she covers her mouth as her heart pounds. Lost in thought amidst a floral background, she wonders why her heart races whenever she thinks of Dan Mokbi. The scene shifts to a grand tournament arena, as the narration states 2 weeks have passed since their arrival in Habuk. The focus shifts to Dan Mokbi, who faces every opponent he meets in the competition. Clang. An opponent draws his sword, ready to face Dan Mokbi in the arena. A powerful blur of motion shows Dan Mokbi effortlessly defeating his challenger in a single strike. Silhouetted against a grand mountain, Dan Mokbi and his opponent face each other in the vast arena. Dan Mokbi stands tall and victorious as his defeated opponent kneels before him on the stone platform. The narration concludes that he has won every match with ease, quickly making his way to the finals. Watching from the crowd, Yeona thinks with pride that Dan Mokbi is amazing and will become the champion if he wins the next match. A blushing Yeona looks on with wide, amazed eyes, wondering if what she's seeing is really that amazing. A spectator remarks that the match is surprisingly refreshing and notes it's the first time he's seen someone from that family use a sword, while a proud Baiko urges them to praise be more. A yawning Baiko complains to Yeona about how long they have to watch the boring competition. As a break begins before the next match, Yeona suggests they go out for a while. The scene transitions to the bustling city outside the arena. A tiny Yeona struggles as she's squeezed and pushed through the dense crowd. Flustered and overwhelmed, Yeona notes the massive crowd on the final day, as others shout about finding an escape route. Phew! Having finally stumbled free, a Chibi Yeona catches her breath. Yeona looks up with wide eyes, relieved to have finally made it out of the throng of people. As Yeona laments how hard it will be to get back to her seat, a voice says, "Hey!" and a sword is suddenly pressed against her back. Startled, Yeona freezes, wondering what is touching her back. She glances back in horror, realizing it's the cold steel of a sword. A man with dark hair coldly tells her to stop thinking and follow him quietly, or else. His chilling threat hangs in the air. He'll kill her right here. Cornered by 3 men, Yeona overhears one confirm she's the spy the Lord mentioned, having seen her with the young master. Yeona's eyes widen with fear and confusion as she listens to her captors. As Yeona realizes her attackers were sent by Dan Moksu, a separate panel shows a smirking man with blue eyes wondering why he is being targeted. Clutching her Baiko doll, Yeona glares defiantly at the men, thinking she has her guardian with her. On a stone staircase, one of the men tells her that since she hasn't committed any major crimes, whoosh, he raises his blade, promising to finish her off as painlessly as possible. Stop. A voice rings out, and a hand intercepts the attacker's weapon just in time. TSK. The would-be killer looks annoyed as a mysterious newcomer scolds the group for ganging up on a powerless girl. The newcomer's voice booms with righteous anger, questioning their shame as martial artists. Her savior is revealed to be a furious, elderly man with a long gray beard. The elder's condemnation echoes again, demanding to know if they have any shame. The thugs turn on the old man, demanding to know who he is and telling him to mind his own business. One of them threatens the elder with the same rough treatment, which the old man calmly considers. In a blur of motion, the elder strikes, effortlessly sending one attacker flying as he coughs in pain. Pow! He dispatches the second thug with another swift move. The final attacker collapses, defeated. The elder stands over the fallen men, casually remarking on how pitiful it is to see young men drinking and lying in the street during the day. Yeona watches the scene with a stunned, "Ooh, wow!" With sparkling eyes, she realizes in awe that he defeated them all with just a fan. She concludes that he must be an incredible martial arts master. Yona gratefully thanks the grandfather for saving her, but he humbly insists he only did what was right. She beams up at her rescuer, her expression full of pure gratitude. The old man smiles warmly and pats her head, remarking on how polite she is. A memory surfaces for the elder. He thinks she reminds him of a child he lost long ago as a voice calls father. In a flashback, a smiling woman tells her father she has chosen a name for her child. The pregnant woman expresses her hope that her child will grow to be kind-hearted, certain her father will like the name. She reveals the chosen name, Yan. Returning to the present, the old man gazes at Yeona, thinking that if his son Yeon had lived, he would be her age. The elder asks Yeona why she was being threatened, but she admits that she doesn't know the reason either. Thinking to herself, Yeona is certain that Danmoksu was the one who sent the attackers. The kind old man, assuming she's a lost child, offers to take her to her parents, causing her to stammer. The old man listens patiently as she begins to explain her situation. Yeona finishes her explanation with a bright, cheerful smile. A cute photo-like drawing captures the happy moment between Yeona and her new elderly friend. After hearing her story, a voice expresses regret for bringing up a painful topic, but another quickly says it's okay. Yeona smiles warmly and explains that she is a servant at the Danmok family estate. She explains that she's found people like family and is no longer lonely. The elder gasps in surprise, questioning if she means the Danmok family estate. He begins to remember that the place his daughter and son-in-law went for a rest cure was. Recalling a flashback of his daughter and her husband, he remembers it was near the Danmok estate and asks Yeona for her name. Yeona hesitates to tell a stranger her name, but trusting the kind grandfather decides she will, earning his praise for being sharp-witted. She proudly introduces herself as Yeon, explaining the spelling. Beaming with a bright smile, she asks him what he thinks. The elder's eye widens in profound shock at hearing her name. Back at the arena, the elder expresses his relief at arriving on time, and Yeona happily remarks that their meeting must be fate. Yeona explains she's there to cheer for Lord Danmokbi, and the elder reveals that his own grandson is her lord's opponent. Yeona shouts in shock as Danmokbi is shown facing his opponent in the arena. She gasps, realizing that her lord's opponent is the young master of the Yibul family. Yeona turns to the elder, tentatively asking him a question. The elder knowingly asks if she admires the lord she serves, causing a flustered Yeona to blush profusely. Overwhelmed and covering her face, Yeona denies it while the elder chuckles, saying he can't be fooled. He observes that her eyes sparkle whenever she looks at the Danmokbi boy. With downcast eyes, Yeona thinks it's presumptuous of her to even consider confessing her feelings. She believes her lord deserves someone better, as she has no background or family to offer. Tiesk. The elder gently bonks her on the head with his fan, telling her not to be so narrow-minded. He encourages her, saying he can tell she's a kind-hearted child and that she should be honest with her feelings. Touched by his words, Yeona looks up at him, just as an announcer's voice declares the match is over. The final winner is announced. Danmokbi, the second son of the Danmok family, stands victorious. As Yeona reacts with surprise, the elder chuckles that his grandson was defeated and warmly congratulates Yeona. The elder tells her to return to her lord, and after bowing gratefully, she promises to repay his kindness and rushes off. She resolves to repay him, even if she has to go to the Jegul family estate herself. With the grandfather's words echoing in her mind, her confused heart finally gains certainty. Taking a deep breath, she walks along a balcony, her mind made up. With a determined smile, she thinks of Danmokbi. Realizing she wants to stay by his side, her thought is interrupted as a hand lands on a shoulder nearby. A dark-haired man pats Danmokbi's shoulder, congratulating him on his hard work. Danmokbi is stunned to see Danmoksu, who smirks and says he knew he'd win. Yeona covers her mouth in horror, recognizing the man who tried to have her killed. The scene shifts to a banquet held to celebrate the victory. Danmoksu smiles coldly as he holds up a cup of wine. He calls for everyone to raise a toast. As Danmokbi sits silently, Guests ask his father for the secret to raising such an exceptional child. Danmokbi glares resentfully at the ongoing celebration. Tisk. Watching from a distance, Beiko makes a sound of disgust. Cradled in Yeona's arms, an angry Beiko fumes that the arrogant brat did nothing to deserve this praise. He furiously declares he should smash Danmoksu's smug face, but Yeona holds him back. Beiko shouts in protest, reminding her that Danmoksu ordered his men to kill her. He warns that Danmoksu will surely try to kill her again when they return home. He continues, explaining that while her master is a shield, he can't protect her all the time. Bayako predicts Danmoksu will wait for an opportunity, using poison or an accident to get rid of her. He urges her to be cautious but trails off, noticing her strange silence. Yona stares forward with a determined, blushing expression, lost in her own thoughts. She thinks to herself that she feels strange. Danmokbi reflects that staying by his side was his only wish, yet Yona feels a profound loneliness. Yona stands quietly with her back to Beiko, who looks on with a confused expression. Beiko asks a distracted Yona why she's avoiding his gaze and not even denying his warnings. Flustered, Yona calls out Beiko as he continues his tirade. Who? Under a full moon, the quiet estate roofline sets a somber mood for the night. Walking through the courtyard, Yona sadly thinks she couldn't even exchange a single word with her master. She recalls how guests swarmed the young master during the banquet, lamenting that he was too busy to speak with. Pausing, she considers talking to him back at their lodgings, but is interrupted by a voice saying, "Oh ho." Danmoksu appears before her, coldly asking why she hasn't left yet. Startled, Yeona recognizes Danmoksu as he scolds her for being slow-witted, thinking his earlier warning should have been enough. He looms over her, declaring this will be his final warning. Danmoksu tells her to disappear quietly before the night is over. A shocked Yona realizes his offer. He will spare her life, but only this once. With their backs to the viewer, he demands to know if she understands his ultimatum. As Yona looks down in distress, he warns her not to make another foolish choice. Collapsing to her knees, she wonders what to do and whether she should tell Danmokbi about the threat. She worries about dragging Danmokbi, who has just found light in his dark life, into a conflict with his brother to protect her. Terrified of ruining his future, her despair is cut short as a familiar voice calls out her name. She looks up to see the kind grandfather from the arena, a look of deep concern on his face. The elder kneels before her, asking in disbelief if he just heard a family head threatening a child. He asks what she plans to do, and Yona admits she feels sorry for her young master. Blushing, she confesses her plan to leave quietly that night to avoid causing trouble. She tries to reason that she can find work elsewhere, but the elder's voice booms no. He firmly states that leaving because of a threat is improper and subjecting herself to more hardship is unnecessary. The elder offers her an alternative, asking if she will trust him and follow him to a safe place. A hand reaches out as she accepts his offer with a simple yes. With his hand still outstretched, the elder formally invites her to come to the Jaegul clan. With her hands clasped and eyes full of determination, Yona makes her momentous decision.